Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
It makes a lot of sense to be back. You know, I spent a lot of time on that field out there. Family, spent a lot of time here. We consider it our home, so it's great to be back.
Out of the eye. Into the backfield, breaks one tackle, steps through another, and Irvin for the touchdown.
There's our lead week play again. You get the fullback leading up on the inside backer there. This is what happens when you send pressure, though. All it takes is one crease. You know, he knows that, too. Oh, good job.
Good play, good stick out of the corner.
They send 5.
And here he is, break the tackle, in for a touchdown. And there is that 6'4", 220 frame of Sims for the touchdown.
First of all, I want to make sure I express my gratitude to all the people that came out and watched us play today, especially all the little kids that were in that tunnel walk or around. You know, I taught our players in there, like, kids, you never know what they're going through, dealing with, how many times they have a chance to come see us. We don't know the situation, so I was really proud of our guys to see them dap kids up, sign autographs, go around, shake people's hands. So proud of our guys for that. But I'm really grateful to all the people that came and watched us play.
Exactly. You never know. First time, last time, long time. Be appreciative. That should be the moral of the whole deal. Just life, right?
Yeah.
Be appreciative.
And grateful. Grateful's a good word.
Grateful's a good word. I like grateful. Grateful's a good word.
Yeah.
I'm grateful you're here today, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good, man. You're a lot better than last Friday.
Yeah, I'm a little perkier.
Smiling, kind of laughing. I was worried. I mean,
Friday was rough.
Yeah,
I'm not going to lie to you.
It is no joke.
It was rough. So I had pump problems right off the bat Friday. The wife had to come in, make sure I didn't die. And then it was like
you say that so casual.
I mean, I've been doing this for 28 years at this point.
Yeah.
You kind of have to be casual, otherwise it ruins your life. So you kind of have to just roll with it, right?
Wow.
No, but the rest of the day was kind of a roller coaster. It was a little rough, but we got on the mend, and then we had a nice little spring game this weekend, and we're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed here on a Monday.
We are live from the H&H Chevrolet Studios. My man Shane Schillerberg is here. We got the TVs up and running. Now, the equipment, hey, it is what it is. If my video freezes or I disappear, that's not on me.
It's not intentional this time.
No. Well, my lack of trying to find the solution is definitely intentional.
Well, sure.
Because it just shouldn't be that hard. But we go through this every week, so we won't lament over folks not being cognizant of other people. Shane has a new vehicle.
He does.
It looks fantastic.
He joined that Jeep gang.
He is in the Jeep gang.
We need to get you in.
Hey, so I had 3
Jeeps
in a row. Yeah, Cherokees. Yeah.
Cherokees or Grand Cherokees?
Well, I don't know. They were the nice ones.
That's a Grand Cherokee. Yeah. The Cherokees are nice now too, but back in the day, the Cherokees were like boxy.
I like their body style better. But I had 2 in a row with faulty parking gear shift things.
Oh, really? What years was this?
Shano, what would that be, like 13 through 19, maybe 13 through 18?
So that was when
9 through 18.
So the new Jeeps are much better. The Fiat bottom.
I had a lot of problems. Yeah. Once I got to about 50K.
Yeah.
A lot of problems.
Some
pretty vehicles though. Like I fell in love with the Cherokees, but Shane says that Shane, what is it again? Is it a Pilot?
It's a Compass.
Compass.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's like the compact SUV.
Yeah. So he says it's
mid-size.
That is definitely not mid-size. He said it's about the same size as his other little car.
It's the same color,
which is weird.
Which is hard. I couldn't believe you could match it, honestly.
Yeah. Shane, are you what is that? Like cobalt blue?
That is pearl blue.
Pearl blue.
It might actually be iced pearl blue, but I might be thinking of the
I was
going to
say electric blue.
Yeah. So
I like that electric blue.
He looks like a big Jays fan out there.
Yeah, go 16 former the Jays. Hey, Shane. So, did the young lady that used to own that vehicle clean it up nice for you?
It was cleaned up pretty well.
Was she getting out of college, or?
I don't think she was getting out of college, but
Let's be real here, though. So I'm not trying to hate on Shane. I love Shane.
Kinda.
But if he got out of like my car, it would look a little awkward.
it does look a little weird out there, sandwiched in between your guys' car.
No, I
I
just
mean,
mean-
it looks like it's just a little itty bitty car out there.
I just mean like, okay, so Shane is smaller than we are. If he were to
He loves pastels.
if he were to get out, I do too, but like in a suit, not in a car as much. If he were to get out of my car, which is like it's the big Grand Cherokee with the third row, it might look a little more awkward. Like it's a size that fits him.
One size fits all.
I'm not trying to be a hater. Just
Shane,
it's like when you see like a little like 4'11" woman get out of like a Dodge Ram 3500. You're like, that looks a little odd.
So driving to Lincoln Saturday morning, I saw a sweet black Silverado.
Ooh, okay.
It was a monster, and I'm kind of
You
jealous
like, you like trucks.
I do.
Yeah.
I do, and I was in one for a little bit, test driving it. And outside of the fact I could never park it, I was very envious of how people could whip those things around. And this little itty bitty thing,
Listen, lots of really good people are bad at parking.
was rolling on the interstate Saturday morning, and she was in her own little world. She was turning and burning a grit, had the music going. I was like, wherever you're on your way. Well, she at least had her window cracked.
She was like bopping though. She was
Yeah. She was moving to something. And it's like 8:30, right? On a Saturday morning. It's cold, but she was busting hump a little bit, but the truck was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've thought about getting a truck. Mostly so we can tow the boat around, but
Wait, you have a boat?
Yeah.
So the more I'm around you,
Well, that's interesting.
these
'Cause
last
now
four-
I want to go fishing.
no, and he's kind of low key bougie for a
I'm
grunt.
super
you're
bougie.
Like
I'm
you're
super bougie.
You're kind of bougie.
Yeah, no, it's not even kind of like I'm very bougie.
I don't recognize what we're doing right now. He just casually says to tow the boat. Yeah, 54 dogs and no
Just
kids.
Four dogs.
So the being a dink is a real thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. It's great.
We can't go backwards.
You can't. That's true.
Can't go
Hard to get
backwards.
rid of them once you got them.
Yeah.
So,
I almost had to choke one this weekend.
so you found the Easter eggs in your Jeep yet, there, Ravi?
Easter eggs? What do you mean?
Yeah, there's Easter eggs.
Like what? Like little hidden features?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, what? Like what?
Mine has apparently seven different like symbols and
Well,
stuff.
this isn't a movie. I want to know what's in my vehicle. Like, what are you talking about? Easter eggs?
There's a Loch Ness.
Peter Cottontail? What
There's
the-
a Loch Ness monster in mine.
Is there?
Yeah.
Pardon?
There's a Loch Ness monster Easter egg in my vehicle.
I
found it yesterday.
I don't even. I'll be honest.
what-
I don't explore the features of my car at all. Like as long as it's comfortable when I sit and drive, and
Bro.
then it kind of plays my music and stuff.
It's a
I'm
Jeep
good.
thing,
Speak English. What's a Loch Ness monster?
like the Loch Ness monster.
Like Nelly
Wow.
Yeah.
Don't even.
Furtado.
Yeah. I'm like a bird. I am about to fly the frick away. You guys keep this nonsense
DB's
up.
out. He's like, we're done.
We're like, what are we talking about?
DB, do you feel left out? You feel left out because it's a Jeep thing?
Yeah, man. Like, what is going on?
Man, I've been telling you, you go get one.
Loch Ness monster. What the world is wrong with you, man?
But there's a Loch Ness monster in my Jeep.
Oh boy, here on a Monday, man.
There's
Loch-
also a gecko. Several Jeeps in my Jeep.
What is he talking
I
about?
have no idea.
We'll check it out later.
No,
But
no,
you can Google it.
no, we won't.
You can Google it. There's 7 of them in my car.
What the world is this dude talking about? I already had an awful weekend. God, I felt like trash too.
Well, you were going nonstop too.
Yeah. I could have done without the basketball this weekend.
I would say the timing of the spring game and the basketball was rough for you.
Yeah, they did not play well. They got to figure it out. Played
Yeah.
some really good teams. There was some high
Ton of
end
talent.
talent.
Ton of talent. We were talking with Sauter about it Friday.
So, and I think he shortchanged that a little because I wasn't expecting to see as many head coaches.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure he did either.
Larnaga was here. Painter, Cronin, Kelvin Sampson. I mean, it
Of course,
was
D-Rock was there.
yeah. Hey, he's super.
No, he's great.
Like he could even though we were on that side of the river, D-Rock, he could probably run for mayor.
Oh yeah, people love him here.
He's very well received. Nebraska in attendance. How about Nebraska scrambling, splitting their staff so they could get back for their big weekend because they had Alec and Hunter Salas in. Spent a good chunk of not a good chunk. Let me not exaggerate. So I was in Lincoln ridiculously early.
Yeah.
For what I had to do. So I probably was there by about 9:15. And we didn't go on until 11. And I still have to figure out the difference between the studio and the booth thing.
Okay.
That's okay. We'll figure that out later. Baby steps. So I was in the academic portion of the building and got to talk to Alec and his family, his mom in particular. She's very appreciative that I am in tune with women's sports.
Okay.
Like how can you not be? We got Coach Williams and Coach Ravel and Coach Flan, Kirsten Barenthal Booth. I said, we have some of the best
you
female
forgot
coaches.
Coach Cook.
Oh, well, he's a given because he was there.
Okay.
Because he was with his sister.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm sure he was looming somewhere, taking pictures, being on a horse with a saddle, whatever it is that Coach Cook does.
Whatever he wants to do.
But you know what's funny? I do usually see him on these weekends, but I did not see him Saturday.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I saw everybody else. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was an event.
But I was true to my word. I did not feel good. It was already a sketchy weekend. I was a man of my word. I did not fraternize. I kept it very, very basic.
No dilly-dallying?
Nope. I even took the service elevator once.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I feel bad too because there's this poor lady that how they kind of monitor where you're supposed to be and so I always pick the wrong door because I'm used to going in the television booth and she goes, "No, it's that one right there, dear." And I must have done it like 5 times. And I picked up from where I left off last year.
Yeah.
She's got to be thinking to herself, how is this dude doing his job? He can't even think. Right? Like, and what can I say though? I can't even I just got to eat it. I'm like, hey, man, it's
it's one of those. It's like, it's a tough look. I don't know what to do there.
Yeah, 4 out of 5 times I turned the wrong handle.
Yeah,
it's tough.
It's one of those. It becomes like one of those mental hurdle things, or like a hiccup at some point where you're like, okay, no, I tried that one last time. It was wrong, and they're like, wait. Or
I actually think the doors are in bad order too. Like it should go the TV, the radio, then the coaches, but. One of the booths is sandwiched in the middle, and it doesn't make sense. Yeah. I don't know if it's a space thing and they wanted that one, but I don't know.
Well, those TV people.
You know the way that my small brain works. It's like, man, I wanted a map like Dora, but
we take it up a notch.
Yes, you do. And so we'll recap the spring game. There will be plenty of hot takes. The portal. It giveth, and it taketh away.
Yeah.
This will be very interesting here in the next week because there's a couple of guys that really, really want to come that I don't even know if they know that there could even be room for them. So there is some negotiating, and you're trying to do it all while, folks some haven't even hit the portal yet.
Yeah, that's the weird part, right?
Oh, but to think that folks aren't having conversations, you're crazy.
No, it's naive.
Basketball is wild.
Basketball is drunk.
Hey, why
You know what's crazy, though, is for all the backroom dealing and things like that we know is going on, then you see a guy like Ryan Nembhard, who we thought was a done deal before he left. We thought that's why he was leaving. And then you're like, oh, maybe this isn't always quite as orchestrated as we think it is.
Yeah, but so it wasn't far off. It was the which connection he was going to ride with.
Right. But it seemed like there was way more uncertainty on his part than it initially seemed.
Yeah.
Because if I'm him, right, just do a little role-playing game here.
Yeah.
If I'm in his situation, I don't make an announcement until I've got my situation locked down.
But here's the thing, though. I think he knew it was one of two,
which is fair, and that makes sense,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. I'm not necessarily talking about the numbers. I'm talking about where the original relationship came from,
Right.
which was a Gonzaga thing.
Right.
In the meantime, Lloyd had gone to Arizona.
Yeah.
So that kept them in the hunt because Lloyd was kind of the guy.
Yes.
But
that's why everybody thought Salas was going to Arizona, because the same thing. He had
Right.
built that relationship with Hunter at Gonzaga. Then he gets the head coaching job at Arizona.
I think people wonder how long Lloyd's going to be at Arizona.
You think?
Out loud, yeah.
Okay.
I do. But for Nembhard, you only need one more year anyway. Just get you through this year. Probably.
Couple more years.
You think?
You
just think he's too small?
He's too. Listen, so if you're his size, you have to be a freak. And he's athletic, but he's not a freak. And you also have to shoot it better than he does.
Yeah.
Like there's too many, he's really good but, or he's really good at this but for his game. And that's not to say that eventually he doesn't find his way. But to me, he looks like that guy's going to play in Europe.
He's in a
good
really,
spot.
really good spot.
He's in a good spot
for him.
And maybe the only spot that kind of would have been worth leaving Creighton for, if you listen to Stephen Ashworth.
Boy.
That was kind of a low-key shot.
Fired. Oh, yeah.
I mean, not even low-key, but.
Yeah, shots fired. But I think the sentiment is, I kind of feel like it's not quite Justin Patton 2.0, but there's a worse flavor in the taste of Jays fans' mouths over Nembhard than there was when Patton left. But Creighton fans were not. Creighton fans were a little salty over JP leaving too.
I know other people were. I understood it. That was probably as high as his draft stock was ever going to be. Now, there's where you have to weigh, and this is a different conversation, but you have to weigh, and we'll get into this with the NFL draft later this week. You kind of have to weigh, okay, where is my draft stock the highest versus where is my chance of succeeding in the league the highest, right? If JP had stayed another year or maybe more, I think his chances of sticking in the league were higher. I don't think his stock ever would have been higher.
I'm probably in agreement with that off the top.
So you have to kind of weigh when those things are the closest to being even. And for JP, his stock was way higher than his readiness to succeed was at that point. So it's hard to say, hey, don't take the money. But at the same time, you have to wonder, okay, was my chance for long-term money better if I stayed a year?
Shane, who sings the song? The chorus is "Gone, take the money and run."
Oh, yeah.
Steve Miller Band.
Thank you, my little radio Rolodex. Yeah, so coming up, we'll talk spring game, obviously. Coach Rule, some good, some bad. A lot of hot takes, right? Like, now all of a sudden, we're all out again on Henrik Harburg, which I'm like,
I don't know how you can
make up your mind.
I don't know how you can watch that spring game and have any hot takes. Honestly, I don't.
Well, we'll talk about that because there are a few.
Which I believe you. It's just I didn't come away from
Do you
that.
have any hot takes?
I don't think so.
Hot take.
I didn't come away from that with like, oh, I've got some scalding takes.
I mean, it was gold. It was absolute gold.
Absolute gold. The Coach Solich weekend that was getting some guys to come out.
Yeah.
Some guys came out to visit that you 98% of the time you're not getting out anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Clint's not going anywhere.
Man, he is rocking that beard, though.
Hey. Oh, yeah.
That thing is aggressive. He makes the Lovey Smith Illinois beard look like child's play.
Clinton was there.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
I'll show you a couple of photos. That's you'd love.
That's my guy.
I got a Clinton Child story for you.
I think everybody does.
Well, it's probably different than other people's Clinton Child stories.
So we'll talk Coach Solich. We'll talk the spring game. Got to talk about the portal, the soapbox known as the NBA, and what happened with Nebraska baseball.
Not good.
Man, you went from first to fifth, just like that.
Life comes at you fast, DB.
It does. Now they're sitting at the middle of the pack at 7-5. We'll talk about that. And
yeah, I mean, life is crazy like that.
I do maybe have a hot take on that. Does it actually matter? Because they weren't getting an at-large anyway.
Well, I don't know. Like, you win the Big Ten.
That league's not getting an at-large.
I tell you, I don't know.
Nebraska was like 110 in the RPI going into the weekend.
Yeah, well, you had a chance, all right? You got Maryland, you had Rutgers. You had some folks that you can make a living off of. You said,
I don't know.
A weird come from behind Wisconsin win in softball against Nebraska, which uncharacteristic, up 3-1. I don't know if we'll get to that, but there'll be plenty with my man, Ravi. Lulla. Again, 888-638-4876. Do you have hot takes? You look at, statistically speaking, what happened. Did you leave thinking, man, this offense could be, or did you think to yourself, ooh, I kind of like what's going on with the defense, therefore? Because isn't it the proverbial conversation, right? Well, who's ahead of the other, blah blah blah.
Right.
Like there was some good and bad for both sides,
for sure. And I think there was more bad on the offense. I think
with balls on the carpet.
Yes, I mean it's hard to look past that, right? Just the sloppiness that you saw on offense is hard to look past, and then it's really hard to project. Okay, if they clean this up, what does that equal, right? X plus Y equals what in that situation? So that what makes it really hard to evaluate the offense based on how kind of sloppy it was at times. But I thought the defense, especially some of those young defensive linemen, I thought, well, I'm going to call them defensive linemen. I get with the 3-3-5. They're going to be lining.
No, yeah, I'm not going to hold you to it. It's
you understand what I mean.
Yeah, and I think I have to give a little grace, right? Because everybody's covering these deals and a 4, a 5, a 7 with the tech, that's going to kind of be a work in progress as we figured out. So I'm going to give a little grace.
And in general, I'm going to use general terms to
if you play along the front, you're going to consider
I'm just D lineman, right? Okay. I understand you might be standing up. I understand you might be dropping the coverage sometimes.
Fair.
We're just going to call them D lineman for the sake of simplicity here. But I was impressed with especially some of the guys from this class. Your Lenharts, your Prince Wills. I thought Maverick Noonan looked good in spots. Obviously, MJ Sherman had a couple moments where he looked good. This is kind of the first time in a while I'm like, okay, some guys along that front look like they could be dudes.
And they may have to play. They may have to go young in some spots.
So there's going to be growing pains.
And have some growing pains. But you have to play to their strengths. Like I thought MJ Sherman was good in some spots, but he strikes me as a guy that's he's a at the point of attack guy where you want him to hold point on that open side there where he can play at the line of scrimmage because he's hard to move.
Yeah, he's a big, strong dude.
He's a strong, thick kid. So now if you're looking for flash and dash, that may be on the opposite side with the weak side spot. So closed or open or strong or weak side, I guess we could get into. But for all intents and purposes, D-line. There are a couple guys that were better than I think they had been.
Okay, like who?
Judy and Wynn.
Oh, sure, yeah. Wynn, I thought, I was really surprised because he had never stood out to me in any way whatsoever until Saturday.
And I think,
okay.
Judy was moving pretty well for a big guy.
Yes.
So there are some things.
But we just named 6 guys, right?
Yeah.
Which is not a problem, but a situation they haven't really had. You get to like 2 and you're like, maybe. And this year, you're like, hey, there's kind of 6 guys I'm interested in.
So what'd you think that the O-line held serve? Hold that thought, because we'll talk about it. Coach Rule had some thoughts on it. That's Ravi Lulla. Really, really good at what he does. I just do me. Shane's over there talking about Easter eggs with his pastel colored compass out there. I think that's what it is on his Pa's decorating car kit. Now back after this on Coffee and Cream in the morning.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
Right? I mean, we're not. We have the players we have. We have some guys coming in. We're going to coach them. You know, so we're not thinking about anybody other than the guys on our team. Right? I mean, we're not. We have the players. Players, you know, the places, and they say, you know, they've gone 3 or 4 years and they've never sat down with their coach.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Players, you know, their places, and they say, you know, they've gone 3 or 4 years and they've never sat down with their coach. You know, we'll do it after every season, after every spring. We'll sit down with each player. We'll talk about, you know, what we see in their game. We talk about what their role will be if we played today. We don't predict the future. We say if we played today, this would be your role. Some of the younger players, we talk about some long-term things in terms of development, and then we talk about their commitment level and off the field stuff. And then, but we ask them to speak their mind, give us their part. And so that's this week. They'll do it with their position coach and coordinator. They'll all do it with me, and you know, they all have a right to not only understand where we see it, but a lot of times you sit down with these guys and you say, "Hey, I see this," and they say, "Coach, you're missing X, Y, and Z," and they're right. So it should be a dialogue. So I'm excited to do it.
There's so much in there. It's very, very interesting that when he says something, it's like there's no parsing, there's no nothing. You're just listening.
Yeah, there's a lot of times it kind of hits you in waves almost. So you get like the initial, okay, I heard what he said. And then you think about it for a second and you're like, oh, it seems like there is deeper levels to almost everything he says.
Mm-hmm.
And not that he's talking in code or anything like that. It's just that
Coach Rule in coded language. That would be great.
Just trying to think of a good answer for
Hey,
you.
how are you going from Eminem to Coach Rule? Wait, what?
but you hear him talk about things like
Clarence has real good parents.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
You hear him say things like, you've got some guys that have been in a program for 2-3 years without talking to their head coach.
Yeah, that was wild. He said 4 years. I'm like, really?
Yeah, and I'm sure he doesn't mean they've never spoken to their head coach, but like sat down and had like a real conversation about.
Oh, okay, hold that thought for a second.
Yeah,
we got to get this out of the way.
Okay,
especially if we're going to be working together for a while. I told this to Uncle Ruru a couple weeks ago. Do you know what I don't want to do?
What's that?
I don't want to say something and have conversations and feel like people have to quantify it to the contrary. For example, Por ejemplo. Man, it is so refreshing to hear coaches say blank. Not that I have anything against the former staff or a couple years. Yeah. Listen, don't do that.
I do have something against the former staff if that's...
But do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and I've said, and I'm consistent. So this may be just a DB thing because I can't stand it when people, it's like, hey, you look nice today. Well, I didn't yesterday. No.
Sure. You don't have to couch the comments, basically.
I can't stand that.
Sure.
It drives me bonkers. It's like, if you have an opinion, you don't have to say, I mean, and that's okay if you don't. Like, don't do that.
Don't hedge it.
Right? Like, just so when we talk about, and I heard it all weekend. All weekend, right? So you're walking around and you're saying, oh, this is different and this is different. Not to say, listen, I'm an adult. I can take it. And you know what else? Well, I'm kind of an adult. It's okay.
Legally speaking, you're an adult.
Right. It's okay to not, you don't have to explain that. Like, what I want people that receive information to be better at is thinking for themselves without having to, like, let them form their own opinions without having to babysit the idea.
You don't have to hold their hand all the way.
No, and I don't want an explanation.
Yeah.
It's like, if I want clarity, I'll ask for you. And if you assume, that's not on me.
Yeah.
That's on them. They can own that. If you want clarity, then ask me. But I kept hearing that, well, and it's weird because sometimes it was like former players. And I'm like, why are you apologizing for that? Like, it's totally fine to just stay in the moment. If you like something that Coach Rule said, or a way that staff is playing, or the way that Coach Mack is recruiting, that doesn't mean you didn't like the way Oltman was doing it. You're just staying in the moment.
Yeah.
Now maybe you didn't. Maybe it is a comparison, but if they assume that's not on us
for sure. And honestly, with Rule, a lot of it for me is a comparison, right? Because of how I felt about the previous staff.
But don't you think what he's saying is just in general? Like it would.
No, I agree.
It's just best practices,
right? So like when it's kind of going back to the Dion thing from last week, right? He was just talking about how he feels about his guys. I felt, and we tried to make it a thing,
right?
Not us specifically, but media people, fans, whatever, tried to make it a thing about, oh, he's taking shots or whatever. And to me, I really felt like he was just talking about his guys and his team.
There's zero question in my mind, especially if you listen to the answer in its entirety.
And it doesn't have to be, not everything is adversarial, right? Not everything has to have, oh, because this is true, then that means we hate this, or because we like this, we think this is stupid, or whatever. And for my part, if I do think something is stupid, I will tell you. I'm usually pretty forthright about that.
No.
But no, I get what you're saying there because it feels like you're hedging your opinions.
We keep doing it. We're doing it in the media.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like,
well, because we don't want to make people mad.
Who
we
cares?
Don't wanna,
you know what I mean? God, do I need my inhaler? This is going to be a struggle.
I'm really good at making local people mad at me. So it's fine.
You got a thing?
Yeah, it's a thing.
So, he said a couple of different things. Shane, can you cue that clip up one more time where he talks about long-term versus short-term versus commitment?
The clip we just played?
Yeah, the clip we just played.
Well, I'd have to play from the beginning.
By the way, Severe said he's thinking like Electric Boogaloo Blue, Shane. I am going to take a picture of that. Like, that's just interesting. I found back-to-back vehicles the same.
I don't even know what that is, but that sounds pretty cool.
Breaking 2. You probably didn't watch that as a kid.
Was there a Loch Ness Monster in it?
Oh gosh.
Players, the places, and they say, they've gone 3 or 4 years and they've never sat down with their coach. We'll do it after every season, after every spring. We'll sit down with each player. We'll talk about, what we see in their game. We talk about what their role will be if we played today. We don't predict the future. We say if we played today, this would be your role. Some of the younger players, we talk about some long-term things in terms of development, and then we talk about their commitment level and off the field stuff, but we ask them to speak their mind, give us their part. And so that's this week. They'll do it with their position coach and coordinator. They'll all do it with me, and they all have a right to not only understand where we see it, but a lot of times you sit down with these guys and you say, "Hey, I see this," and they say, "Coach, you're missing X, Y, and Z," and they're right. So it should be a dialogue. So I'm excited to do it.
That might have been my favorite thing that he said, that last part.
The dialogue?
Well, sometimes you'll sit down with a player and you'll say, "Hey, this is what we're saying." And he's like, "Coach, this is what you're missing." Because that happens.
Isn't that something?
And a lot of coaches aren't great at receiving that information. Is that a fair way to put that?
Yeah, I'm vibing. I'm listening.
Because I've been there. I've been on both sides of that, right? Where I'm insistent that, no, you're wrong. I get you're out there and seeing it. And sometimes they are wrong, right? Sometimes they're seeing something that they think they're seeing something that they're not.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be willing to be open to the idea that they're seeing something on the field or on the court, when I'm doing basketball, that you're just not able to see from the sideline. And I appreciate the recognition of that. Mm-hmm. It goes back to something we talked about a couple weeks ago, where he probably is the smartest guy in most rooms that he's in, but he's still willing to learn and wanting to learn from everyone else.
So you know what I think it is, and I'm gonna go kind of semantics here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's necessarily his aptitude when you say the smartest guy in the room, because I know he has that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I think he almost 100% of the time is?
I think I know what you're going to say, but go ahead.
He's the most perceptive.
I was going to say emotionally intelligent, which is kind of the same. We're in the same neighborhood there, I think.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the. He seems like he reminds me a little bit of my former boss, Coach Frank. Guy I used to coach with at Westside,
mm-hmm.
where I always would look at him and say he would be a miserable person to play cards with, because he's very He has this ability to kind of be sizing you up as you're doing your thing.
Just
right?
read people.
And he's not saying anything,
mm-hmm.
right? And sometimes he'll just let you go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh boy, I may have given him too much there, right? That reminds me a little bit of Coach Rule, where he can be the only guy that's not saying anything in the room and learning the most.
Sure.
Because he always has these analogies or that reminds me of when, and he has like this case study.
Yeah, he's got a Rolodex of them.
Right.
Because he's always taking in information.
So his memory is tremendous, but his perception is unbelievable. That's why I think he can read and develop kids. We'll talk about this on the other side, but look at the guys that he's starting to flip position-wise.
Yeah.
You have to be able to see it, but he has a case study from someplace else to pit it against.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen that before. That looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be back. Coffee and Cream up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
I mean, I think there's a lot of time left. There's a lot that has to happen. For me, everything goes in stages. I talked about in the winter earning the right to go to spring ball. In spring ball, I talked.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
I mean, I think there's a lot of time left. There's a lot that has to happen. For me, everything goes in stages. I talked about in the winter earning the right to go to spring ball. During spring ball, I talked about earning the right to be excited about the spring game. And so we have a lot of work to do this summer. Really the spring, finishing school up. We have several weeks left of school, but I would see no reason why those guys wouldn't be fighting to start, play, any and all of the above. And as I said, especially up front on the defensive line, we're going to play. We're going to play two hockey lines if we could, if not three. Keep guys fresh. We have a lot of young talent.
There you go. Welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning. Coming up at the bottom of the hour. Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Bottom of the hour, Bill Bender talking college football. And in the 9 o'clock hour, Brady Oltmans will help us put it's not even a bow because it's Monday and he goes first.
Yeah.
So it'll help us get the gift paper and all of that for the package known as spring football. Because there was a lot going on, right? We're in the booth before we go on air and we're watching Minnesota indoor at their practice facility. A lot of hot takes about whether they should be inside or outside. Yeah. It's a lot of people to be watching. It's all relative. I'm not saying it's 66K, but that's a lot of people to have around in an indoor facility. So hopefully nobody took a ball, got ear-holed by football, or anybody got rolled up on, but that was in a controlled environment.
Yep.
Wisconsin was outside.
Right after Nebraska. Yep.
They look good. That looks a lot like their practice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because you were there not too long ago.
Yeah, that looks so to the naked eye, right? I'm like, that looks a lot like their practice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, full disclosure, I do feel like Nebraska's spring game looked a lot like their practice. Although I will say this, and I'm going to leave this right here. You're missing a good chunk of their offense. They did not utilize, in my opinion, they did not utilize a good portion of their offense.
So I'm glad you said that, because my big takeaway, which I don't think is a hot take, was felt pretty bland offensively.
So, okay, so yes and no. Formation-wise, no, right?
Right.
3 tight ends, 2 tight ends, 1 tight end, empty,
But
motion.
Actual play call
The
wise,
play designs within that, I could
vanilla.
see that. I
Pretty
could see
vanilla.
that, right?
Because I expected, when I see that many formations, I expect there to be a lot more going on than there was.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the point of running all those formations, is to give a bunch of different looks, to get the defense's eyes confused a little bit with motions.
You want a lot of stuff on tape.
Yes.
Not only for you to work on,
Right,
but you
but
want
for-
your opponents to have to prep for it too.
Especially with a first-year head coach.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they threw some formations out there that they don't even necessarily have any intention of using on a regular basis.
Because what's Minnesota going to do, right? Minnesota's going to go to, okay, what's Sat like to do? What
They're going to go to the spring game. They're going to go to South Carolina from last year.
Yep.
And that's probably
and
about
they're going to Syracuse for T.Y.
For T.Y., yeah. But that's probably about it, because Rule's time at Baylor was too long ago. Carolina's the NFL, so that probably doesn't
And
make
they
a
had
ton
to
of
do a little
sense.
more spread, self-admittedly, than he wanted to at Baylor.
Yes. So you look at those things, you're like, that probably doesn't make sense. Carolina probably doesn't make sense. You're probably looking at spring game, South Carolina, and Syracuse. And that's about it, which means you don't have a ton to go on. And so showing a ton of different formations is really advantageous for Nebraska in that sense. I also think showing a ton of different formations and then not running, as you said, a pretty good chunk of what you think they're going to run.
Yeah, I just think there's one portion in particular we didn't see any of.
You want to?
No.
Okay.
No, but I just think it'll be a big part of what they do, just because I think it fits their personnel, and that part of it I'm okay with not putting so much on tape.
Let me ask you kind of a larger picture question here.
Okay.
About spring games in general, because
Ask away.
So I'll just say I'm really good at evaluating basketball in non-game situations, because that's kind of what I did, right? So I felt really comfortable at Summer League, where that's not a real game situation, obviously. I felt really good evaluating people there because I knew what I was looking for. Okay. I'm not as good at that as at football, because I just don't have as much experience in it. So when I see a spring game situation, which Nebraska's was more game-like than most, if you watch the Colorado one, they were 7-on-7 for a portion.
We'll get to that.
There was but it was a much not stranger, but it was a much less game-like scenario for a lot of the portions.
Real quick, is Colorado already getting a return on their investment?
I mean, in publicity alone, yeah.
Revenue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So let me ask you this. When you're watching a spring game, inter-squad scrimmage like that, what are some of the things you're looking for that you think translate? Because that can be hard if you don't have a ton of experience evaluating that.
Fair question. So for me, I look at tackling, how many people get to the football.
Okay.
So I talked about that quite a bit during the broadcast. I always talk about this Bermuda Triangle, inside, outside, point of attack. I want 3 guys.
Sure.
I want them corralled.
Triangulating the ball carrier.
That happened a ton.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's definitely portable.
Okay.
Pad level and being good at the point of attack. I definitely think that's something that's portable.
Okay.
How do I play? Am I high? Do I come off the ball a certain way? Because those things, that's technique.
Yeah.
And you can see technique.
Sure.
And then I think the other thing is timing.
Okay.
Where a ball may not get to you on time, but what the route look like. A ball may come out of your hands on time, but the receiver, like so many new people, right? that's off? Is it 1, 2, 3? Like that lets me know command. Those are little things like that I think are portable, that aren't necessarily outcome driven.
Okay, sure.
Right.
And that's what you have to look for in a scrimmage or a non-game scenario, is things that are not outcome driven.
Yeah. So like when I watch guys run the ball, I'm looking at how they ran it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not looking at
how many yards did you get
statistically.
Right.
I'm just, because sometimes you don't have a hole. Sometimes you make a hole. Sometimes it's due to your patience.
Like a good instance of this, I thought, was Harburg's first play. Okay, he busts one off for 23 yards. The most impressive part of that, I thought, was his mesh, where he took his time, was patient, made a good read, and then took off.
Yeah.
That was the most impressive part of that play, not the 20 yards after.
I'm with you.
Which is awesome, right? Because you're like, oh, he really is a good athlete, right? But that moment where he looks so natural and comfortable having that mesh, leaving it, because so many guys want to bail on the mesh early, right? Because they either don't want to have a fumble, they would want to make sure they get off and go.
You know the beautiful thing about you saying this?
What's that?
Ball handling will matter.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Coach Rule talked about that. We saw some of the sloppiness with the ball.
Handling will matter
with the ball on the turf quite a bit. But I thought that was like, so is that like one of the things you're talking about? How he did it, not the result of the play?
Absolutely. Like I felt like, well, and we'll get to this in a second. I felt like Purdy played better.
That's the best Purdy's looked
than his stats.
Yeah,
because he's just 2 of 4, a couple drops, but
yeah,
when he's in rhythm and on time, he's not bad. Shane, let's go to Michigan Lance real quick. Michigan Lance, welcome to the show.
I don't know.
Hey, you with us?
Good morning, boys. How y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
What's up, Lance?
Hey, what's up, man? I'm doing good, man. It was a great sports weekend, man. How you guys go talk about all this stuff, man?
We got all week. It's gonna take some time.
Hey, please do. Please talk about everything all week, man. The tank fight and all that stuff, man. Spring game takeaways for me for Nebraska. Is it Raheem Johnson?
Ramir
Johnson.
Radio
Ramir
Johnson
Johnson
was a movie character.
Right. Was Do the Right Thing, 1989. Andrew, take a look at it. Really good movie.
He said, Andrew. I'm with Ravi.
Oh, Ravi's in the house. Hey, I haven't listened. I just called in. I haven't listened yet. Okay. Ravi. Oh, my God. Hey.
Oh, Lord.
Steph Curry. My man, hey, this is a trend. He's made some blunder moves. Like, this isn't the first time. And it's crazy. It's just wild, man. For him to be such a great player over the years, in playoff games, you know what I mean, in finals, to make blunder moves, whether it's behind the back passes, like, man, that's wild to me. What about you?
I thought he was just paying tribute to the Sacramento great Chris Webber.
I knew you were about to bring that up.
Wow.
Right.
No, I mean, listen, there's been some things.
So we went from Ramir Johnson to Steph Curry because Ravi's a GS fan?
He knew I was here, so he knew he had to take shots.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. We're going to get back to Ramir Johnson, though.
All right, you got like a minute, Lance. Let's go.
Oh, hey, but Ramir Johnson, Gabe Irvin, those are the top 2 running backs. That should be, you know what I mean? Hang your hat on the run game. I mean, that's the Big Ten. I'm not,
Let me ask you something.
Yeah, man, them guys should be getting 25 Ks a game, 25 to 30 between the both of them.
Hey,
those are the top 2 better.
Why Irvin over Grant or Allen?
Because of his shiftiness, his feet. He has good feet, good burst, and good power.
Okay.
He has it all. Ramir has the feet. I don't think he has the power like Irvin, but he's not far off either. You know what I mean? So I'll go 1-2 with those guys.
Of the backs, Johnson runs behind his pads the best, and he's the smallest.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'll give you that, man. They both got great. They both look like pure natural running backs. Pure good natural running back
you more time
than Allen or.
I don't know if I disagree with that. The running backs would be interesting.
Yeah, we can talk about that on the other side.
Yeah, on the other side, let's get the great Sam McKewon up next on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
I just felt comfortable with it right now. You know, Coach Rule, I know when
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
I just felt comfortable with it right now. You know, Coach Rule, I know when he got to town, he got a hold of Coach Osborne. He texted me some. We texted back and forth, talked on the phone maybe once, maybe twice. And that wasn't happening before. And so I just felt welcomed in that manner, and knew that it would be good to get back and be a part of what Nebraska's all about. And and so I looked forward to it, and I'm glad I'm here.
That was Coach Solich, who has a locker room named after him. A lot of hot takes about that, too. I'm like, do we have to have an opinion on everything?
People have hot takes about the locker room?
Oh, just whether it should or should not have been named. I'm just like,
I low-key kind of thought they were going to name the whole new facility after him.
Really?
I thought that's what it was. Like, that's what I thought the announcement was.
Like, are we up in, if nobody said anything about the locker room, like, would we have been up in arms about it, or just because it was, we have an opinion?
I think people just feel like they have to have an opinion about things.
An opinion? Opinions are good. This guy's got one. He's got several as the editor for the big paper from the Omaha World-Herald. It is Sam McKewon. Sam, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Damon?
I'm good. Rare. I feel like I only saw you for mere seconds. Is that more a me thing? I usually
no. Well,
that was crazy.
I mean, you're busy. You're busy up there.
No, busy hiding.
I was down on the sideline for quite a while there. So talking to people, talking to recruits, talking to my old boss. He was back in town. That was good. So yeah, I mean, I was busy too on Saturday. It just felt like a compressed timeline for some reason. Things moving fast. So,
it's cool to see how tremendously well received that is.
Yeah.
Good guy. Good.
Yeah.
Good guy. Hey, speaking of good guys, were you a little surprised about the announcement, or did you have a feel on what the surprise announcement was going to be with Coach Solich?
I had a feeling that's what it was going to be. Yep, I expected that. I think it's fitting because he was a former player. He was a former player and a former coach and a former assistant. So like his investment inside the football program is pretty significant. And I think there's a really cool way to honor that. I'm sure there'll be sort of an interior display and maybe a photo of him as a player. He's a really well-known player, so he wasn't just an assistant coach. Obviously, he was sort of part of the building blocks of that early Devaney era, and that's pretty significant stuff. Without him and a number of other really good players, Nebraska isn't what it is. They don't get to the 80s and the 90s without those guys. So I think it's good to honor him, and I look forward to more players getting honored, either with statues or whatever you got to do. Whatever they want to do around the facility or within the facility would be good, because they've had a number of players who've done a lot of significant things in their history.
Sam, after the entire weekend, obviously the Coach Solich stuff, and then you've got the actual game in and of itself, as you're walking away from things Saturday evening, let's say, I'm sure you were working past that, but for argument's sake, we'll just say you're walking away from the whole weekend Saturday evening. What was your overall just feeling of how things went? I know that's a very kind of broad question, but I wanted to get your overall just sense of this kind of first big event of the Matt Rhule era.
I thought it was productive. Certainly it was very much a real game. So like they were there for 2 hours and 20 minutes, playing a lot of football, a lot of hitting, a lot of physicality.
Yeah.
I think if you don't want to play for Matt Rhule, then you have a pretty good sense of why you want to leave or whatever you want to call it, because you're 2 hours into that game and you got linemen out there that have been playing 80 snaps, and so like if you're all in, you're all in. You'll know after this what the experience was like. I think it was a rigorous winter and spring. I thought Jeff Sims threw some nice passes. I did. Didn't see a ton from the backups in terms of just things that would indicate that they would be great in a game. I do think, obviously they can run the football a little bit with Harburg and maybe even Purdy. Defense, which I wrote about today, that's a real work in progress, obviously. But I think there's some fun things to it. The guys are moving around. They're creating, havoc and getting some guys open to make plays. I know that sounds like a strange way to say it, but there were some moments there where what they called, facilitated the opportunity to make a play. And I think that's notable. They got to get faster, no doubt. But I like that they played a lot of the young guys, and I thought the young guys played fairly well, and there was a different speed to some of those young guys. And so, all in all, I thought it was all right. I think that's a team, if you take that team and you add the defensive starters that sat out the game, you got a fighting chance in Minneapolis. I don't know that you're going to win, but you got a fighting chance. And I liked most of what I saw.
It's interesting you say that. That wasn't even my next question, but since you said it, I get the sense a lot of people, and I obviously had seen Minnesota this spring. I'd seen Minnesota on television a couple hours before that. But as I'm kind of on a Monday, I get the sense that there isn't near as much confidence going to Minneapolis in April as one may think in an offseason. Why? Is it their dominance over Nebraska?
I think people
haven't had a great offseason.
No. I think people are conditioned to just be wary at this point. Okay. I think that's probably where it's at. And I don't think people want to get over their skis because I think people very much want it to work with Matt Rule, but I think at the same time, there's a sense of, well, we've been here before and we don't want to get overconfident or fans don't want to get their hopes up, that kind of thing. And so that's something that, Matt Rule won't necessarily feel per se right away. But those first two games are huge. They're really important. Winning one of them would be really, really helpful. And I don't know which one they're more likely to win or less likely to win, but winning one of the first two would be good. I watched a little bit of Colorado spring game. I need to watch more. There's some players, but I don't know. He's got a lot to do in terms of, he added a bunch of players, and so there's still a work in progress. But he's got a good staff. Keon hired good coaches. He did. He's got a good staff. So, and you can count on him to. We can talk about Dion another time. There's a lot of things about him that I like, and you can certainly count on him to develop an edge in that team. I don't know if he's going to manage a football game. So many games that he managed at Jackson State, they just blew teams out. So I don't know how much experience he has with one-score games and stuff like that, but he'll have the culture piece pretty fired up by the time they play. So I guess I say that to say this, that, Nebraska's got work to do. I think Matt Rule knows that. He didn't come into the post-game puffy or overly angry or any of those things. I think he knows they got a ton of work to do. And he struck me as a guy that was ready to go watch the game, go watch it on film for hours on end. And I think that's the kind of coach Nebraska needs right now, is somebody who's just ready to work and work and work and work and work.
So we saw Cam, we saw Princewell, we saw Mav, we saw MJ Sherman, we saw Collier, right, on the move a ton with some pressures. Who would you like of the new arrivals that you think has some long-term sustainability?
I think Sherman's the player that's probably going to, play the most. He's 250 pounds and has spent 3 or 4 years inside a strength and conditioning program that is going to help him deal with the inevitable wear and tear of the Big Ten. I think long-term, over 3 or 4 years, Princewell's got a lot of ability, and Cam does. I think Cam is mature for his age physically, and I think he's also a pretty smart player. We didn't talk to him a ton. We just talked to him here after the game, but my read of him, just watching his IMG highlights and things like that, is he knows the game pretty well, and he might be closer to like who he's going to be physically now than maybe Yellen or certainly Maverick Noonan. So Mav is, he's going to put on weight and he'll reshape himself, I think, somewhat considerably. Whereas if you look at Cam Lenhard, you're like, if that guy had played in Nebraska last year, he might have had 20 sacks. Like he would have been kind of unstoppable. But I think he may be closer to his athletic ceiling, if that makes sense. So I think all of those players are going to be good, and I think they've got a chance. They've got a chance. Collier's an interesting player. They brought him down a lot, from the secondary down to the second level. They did the same with Isaac Gifford. Really interesting to see Miles Farmer on the second team. That was striking. We'll see if Collier can hold him off, or for that matter, we'll see if Collier can hold off Marquise Buford when he comes back in the fall. Although Marquise has a redshirt year, and so you want to make sure he's 100% healthy before he returns. There's a lot of moving parts, but again, I think they've got some players. They need more, and I think Coach Rule would say that in an honest moment, he'd like, yeah, I like where we're trending, but got to go get more guys. I think that's what he would say.
It's weird how you got, because I think Ravi was like this too. Maybe I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like offense could use more guys right now, given much druthers than defense.
Well, there's only so much flexibility there. I think they're going to try to get an offensive line in the portal lineman, but that's hard, right? Because there's going to be some guys that go in.
You got to be able to evaluate, because on the high end, it just doesn't happen a ton.
Right. So they'll have to chew on that. Those guys are pretty coveted. Wide receiver, I don't know. I mean, they've got 6 guys coming in. So, I think they're expecting 2 or 3 of those freshmen to contribute right away. And they have to, or something. They have to contribute something. I think we can see that they've got Billy Camp and Marcus Washington and, I don't know, Xavier. Maybe he got banged up yesterday, I don't know, but I think Xavier will stick around at least for maybe a summer, hopefully, and into the fall. And then you've got Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda, who didn't play yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, absolutely any players on offense, any players on both sides of the ball. Betts could have had a touchdown. I will say that if Harburg just lets that route run out, the one where, Betts is going toward the corner of the end zone about 50 yards out, he has a chance to throw that ball.
Yeah, he just got it right earlier.
Down and it was, that could have been a touchdown. That's the stuff that I think when you go back and watch the tape, and people who watch the game will not be able to see. Betts runs out of the screen, so you don't really know, but that was a score. Yeah. You've got to be able to, deliver that ball. So, I'm sure there's things they'll be able to see on their all-22s or whatever, just examining the game. I came out of it thinking, they ran the ball all right. You're the running backs expert, so I'll ask you this. Between Irvin and Grant, who do you think ran better?
I'm going to say Grant, just because I think he's come the furthest. Right? Like, you could tell he's had an offseason of correcting what people didn't love about his game. Right? He was much more decisive. He's still elusive. Irvin didn't have a lot of space, right? But he does have really good vision. And, of course, he had the patented stiff arm against Omar Brown one-on-one in the open field. But I don't know. I think the 2 best natural runners are Allen and Ramir. Irvin is close, right? He just needs more reps. He needs reps, and I think Grant is made the most strides, right? So I think that's going to be a race for a while. Like they have, all of them can do a little bit something different. Now, what didn't help those guys is the versatility of the run plays. I mean, you only ran a couple, 2-3 plays. You ran a little power, a little ISO, a little lead, and that was about it. I mean, they had some counter, right, that I liked, but they're so conditioned to get downhill, like they didn't really follow some of those pullers and wrappers, right? It was just like they were taking what they could get, make them snap it again. I think over time they'll get a better feel for those guys pulling and be able to make some more plays.
Yeah, feel is you know a lot about more than I do about that.
But do you know what I mean? Like when they run counter, right? They'll get the two pullers. They did it a couple of ways. They'd use the wham block and then one puller, or sometimes they'd run good old-fashioned tag where they used two pullers. It's a timing feel play. You know, you have to kind of rep it over and over. Amon got better at it over time with the Packers, right? Wasn't like that in Seattle, but with reps and feel for that offensive line, it becomes very. It's tough to stop when you have teams that don't beat pullers. So I'm kind of patient with the running backs here.
Yeah, the idea of feel is just I agree. You know, I thought the last 2 years I've watched Oklahoma's running backs, and those guys are pretty good in my opinion. Yeah. The two guys they had the last 2 years, and I was like, if Nebraska had one of those two guys, they just would be a little bit better. I don't know if they have that guy or not. I would agree with you that Grant. I think the thing I would say about Grant is that if he can keep his feet under him, he's just a really interesting runner at the second level. He gets through the hole quick and he's fast.
And the first guy never gets him. So you're always waiting for him to kind of like crease that thing because he hits it. I mean, he's not dancing around. He hits that thing. He's just not as instinctive, right? He needs a hole.
Yeah, that's very much true. So I don't know. Like, I think that position, I know what Rule said about him. You know, I also understand that Matt Rule is a guy that wants to build his players up. And, you know, he said, hey, we got really good running backs. I think they're pretty good, you know, but again, there are times when I wonder a little bit. I thought Irvin had a couple good runs. Ramir had one really good run, right? It was only like 4 yards because somebody got unblocked, but you know, that one short yardage play, and there's things that Ramir does really well, but, you know, he's also 100 and whatever pounds. And so the expectation, I think I wrote this, like, the expectation he's going to carry the ball 25 times for 12 games is not realistic. So you probably have to start someone else or something, you know, and bring him in, you know, at the way they did against Iowa, you know, as kind of all of a sudden here he is in the second quarter and he's just got a different burst to him. So that's a position I'm going to watch again and go back and watch the game. You know, obviously, Borkercher looks like the number one tight end.
I'm telling you.
Gilbert had a couple. Yeah, he is. He was good.
I don't know why. I felt like I was having to talk people into him. And I get some of the drops last year. He's going to be legit, though.
He's just as tall as Sidoni, just so we're clear. Like, he's not short. He's not he's not a 6'2" and 235-pound guy. He's just as tall as Sidoni. Maybe not quite as fast, but clearly knows what he's doing. Gilbert had a couple drops, you know. Now when he runs a route, he can run. So he's got to catch the ball.
I think we're kind of sleeping on his performance of what they asked him to do.
Yeah. So he had a really good, as you mentioned, the sort of the block, the cross block that he had. Which was really good early in the game. He also had a couple of lead blocks. He ran the ball fairly well. You know, and then I wish they had a chance with Brunson for one more year, man. He would have been good in that role. But you know, I thought he played pretty well.
I think just Rule's ability to envision Bonner's role is impressive.
It is.
Am I overstating that?
No, I don't think so.
Because I don't think anybody saw that in Bonner.
Because he's not like, and he's not a cookie cutter guy, right? He's not a guy that fits one specific mold. You're like, that guy's obviously a tight end, or that guy's obviously a running back, or whatever. You see, hey, I think we can fit him in here. He brought up Kyle Juszczyk, who's a guy like that as well, who's one of my favorites, right? Does a million different things. And when you have a guy that can do that, it makes life really difficult on the defense.
It's hard to personnel.
Yeah, because you don't know what they're in.
It's hard to personnel.
Sam, I wanted to ask you before
it's good.
Here.
Go ahead.
We hadn't got to the quarterbacks yet. Obviously, Casey Thompson wasn't playing, but Jeff Sims looks pretty good. Is this going to be the first time in a while that we've got an actual honest-to-God quarterback conversation in the fall? Or are we overstating what we saw from Jeff Sims yesterday or Saturday?
If we're here, if Thompson's here in the fall, then they have a quarterback competition, although I think Sims is ahead because he can run. Now, Casey's not immobile. Like, he can scramble a little. So he's not, he can run a little bit. But I assume, Evan Bland and I have this conversation a lot. He's just certain that Casey's staying. And he's like, look at him out there. He's not going anywhere. And I'm like, okay, well, I understand what you're saying. I said, but I'm doing these Big Ten check-ins, and Northwestern would be Northwestern's starter tomorrow. Like tomorrow. There's nobody on Northwestern's roster as good as Casey. And so, he's going to have to assess how he wants to do things. If he wants to stay here and finish it out, I think that would actually be a really good move for him to learn under this coaching staff, because Casey's going to be a coach one day. I mean, we can all tell that. And so, he's probably not going to have a 15-year NFL career. He's going to move into coaching. And I think this would be a heck of a staff for him to, at least learn through. And chances are good he's going to play at some point this season if he sticks around. I think it would be a genuine competition. Sims made a couple real nice throws. I think he's got a nice demeanor. Players like him. You can tell that. They like him. He handles himself pretty well. I thought the operation of the offense looked good. And I did not, again, I'll defer here to Damon too. Maybe you've already talked about this. I did not see another quarterback on that field that was anywhere near as good as Casey Thompson or Jeff Sims. But that's me. I'm not a coach or a player.
I'm in agreement.
Okay.
I'm in agreement.
So there's a couple things. Yeah, there was a really good run. But, there's a couple of pass plays where you're seeing him roll out, Harburg roll out, and you've got to get rid of the ball, and the ball's not coming out. And it's just little things that, just shows, hey, maybe not quite ready.
Sam, good stuff, man. Enjoy the week. I know you'll be busy with the Pick Six podcast, and I'm definitely catching up on the defense this week. They stayed pretty vanilla, but he's got a lot of guys on the field, so I consider that a win.
Yep, agreed.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate your time.
Bye.
Come back, pay a few bills. Coffee and Cream coming back. $5.90 next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes.
Holding that ankle area. Gosh dang it. That's one thing in the spring game. You try and just get out of here as healthy as possible. And now you're talking Turner Corcoran goes down in the first half. You now have Jacob Hood that's probably...
How did your first walk in the tunnel live up to the hype?
That was amazing. Seeing all those little kids there, how much they're excited to be see a Cornhusker football game. The last 24 hours have been surreal. Hanging out with Coach Solich, Tom Osborne, Heisman Trophy winners, and then this for our players is amazing.
Here he is.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
How did your first walk in the tunnel live up to the hype?
That was amazing. Seeing all those little kids there, how much they're excited to be see a Cornhusker football game. The last 24 hours have been surreal. Hanging out with Coach Solich, Tom Osborne, Heisman Trophy winners, and then this for our players is amazing.
Pretty authentic. That is Coach Matt Rule. On the weekend that was, I talked to him early Saturday morning, and I made the mistake. I said, and we may be more alike than I think, but I asked him, I said, well, thanks for that bed music, Shane. So we welcome you back live from the H&H Chevrolet studio with my man, Ravi.
Who you can now reach at Ravi at Hurrdat.com.
Hey, how about that?
There we go.
Air tap.
Make things happen.
Make it happen, Captain. Emma's good at what she does.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's on point, right? It's like you have some specific directions and you get it done.
Oh, yeah. She made it super easy for me.
Yeah, enjoy filling out that Paycom thing, too, because that's a headache.
I think I already did.
Did you get the app?
I don't know. They sent me a link, and I just filled out a bunch of stuff.
Do that, because when you do, you're big time.
Oh, I filled out the stuff. Yeah, I want to get paid.
Shane, look, hey, Look, we got one. I think we got one.
Best thing we can do is just model what it means to be a Lion out there.
If it has to do with me getting paid, I'm gonna get it filled out.
Yeah. Go ahead and get that done. So, and I asked
Do you,
Coach.
do you want to fill mine out? Because I'm having troubles with it.
No, I helped you with that.
I don't know. I keep getting all these emails saying something about, it's not right or something. I when I filled it out, I felt like
I got up there and just crushed it.
You gotta be patient. I asked him, if he was excited.
Yeah.
And he kind of hem-hawed a little bit, and he's like, well, yeah. He goes, I don't know what it is. I got up at X amount of time, which was
early.
Yeah. He goes, I never went back to bed. So I think, yeah, but it's more about just making sure that I've got everything done that I need to get done.
Yeah.
So he didn't give in to the excitement, but was more about a to-do list.
He doesn't.
And I was like, gosh, you know what? I'm not super nostalgic either, right? I barely remember my senior day. I hate taking okay, I get it. You just like to kind of stay in the moment.
He doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to get super hyped.
Yeah. And I'm terrible, right? I'm not excited about graduation parties. I just don't think I don't know, man. I'm kind of a bad parent in that regard because it's so fleeting and it changes. And it's well, and I don't know. I'm not good at those kinds of things in the moment.
Does it have to do with?
I don't remember my senior night of high school. I don't remember any of that.
Does it have at all to do with, because you come from a family that's well educated, a lot, your siblings, parents,
correct?
You're an educational family, right?
Yep.
So in a setting like that, and I know this isn't true for everybody, in a setting like that, a high school graduation is not the biggest deal in the world. Is that fair?
Fair.
There's other things you have to go do now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was just kind of business as you.
Right. It's expected of you,
and so I'm not.
And I know there's some families where that's not the case, where
it's just I don't know if it's a flaw, but I should remember my senior day. I remember 2 spring games.
Yeah.
One because I played well, the other because I lost a teammate, and that was the first time they did Husker Vision.
Yeah.
Everything else, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't want to downplay it either because I do understand, and it warmed the proverbial cockles of my heart that I actually think spring is now a time where you try to win a job. In fall will be where you try to hang on to it.
Keep it. Yeah.
That's how it should be. There shouldn't be any of these predetermined things, man. It should be open competition every spring to go win a job.
Well, that's why I asked about the quarterbacks, because it hasn't felt like an open competition at quarterback for a very long time.
Yeah.
Now, part of that, I don't think it's because anybody was like, oh, we're just predetermining things. I don't think they had other options. I think they had one guy they felt comfortable with at any given time, and that was really the only option. Now, you can say, well, they should have recruited better, should have developed better behind the starter, things like that, whatever you want to say. But this feels like the first time since we're going on at least a decade here, right?
Depends on how you felt about the whole Jebbia stretch. Remember that?
So at the very beginning of Adrian Martinez, Tristan Jebbia, so maybe. Right, and he ended up starting games in Oregon State, so you could say, "Hey, that's a Power 5 starter, at least a potential."
And I think he had a better camp than the competitive critics would lead you to believe.
Fair,
because I wasn't enamored. I actually felt like it was legit, and maybe I was the only one, and it turns out I was maybe wrong because he left. But I actually think it wasn't head and shoulders. It took a couple of lightning runs where a couple of my former guys were looked at me and yeah, you got to play that guy.
Sure.
And they were talking about Martin. He ripped off one in the scrimmage, and I was just I'm sitting way up underneath in the shade. And so I go down to see what a couple of other guys think. And I remember at that time, it was Monte Cristo, Lance Brown, and Makovica.
Mm-hmm.
So, they're kind of huddled up along the sidelines. And I'm like, man, I actually think this is a better quarterback battle than people think. And about 3 minutes later, literally.
Yeah.
Martinez rips one off, and Monty looked at me and he goes, that guy's different.
Yeah.
So I was
sure.
But I felt up until then, there wasn't anything where I was
And then you can go back and revisionist history and be like, okay, well, if they do start Jebbia, at least at first, he stays on campus. Maybe you win more games that first year because Adrian gets hurt and whatever. And, you can play that chase the rabbit down the whole game all you want. But so we have one off season 5 years ago, right? And then before that, another stretch of 5 years or more.
Yeah.
So you're talking
some say the Gans deal should have been a better battle
with like Sam Keller.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're going back 18.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Years at this
it's been
point.
a minute. That was early 2000s.
That was 2005
and 6,
right? Or it was the last year of Callahan, 2007. So that's 16 years ago at this point. So we're talking about one, maybe 2 off seasons in 16 years where you've had an honest to God quarterback battle. Okay. And I think most of the time you want to know who your guy is, but also you want to feel comfortable that you could put your second guy in and not have it be a disaster.
If I'm Casey, I'm with Evan on this one. If I'm Casey, I'm not going anywhere.
I think Casey's going to be the starter.
Life is good.
I don't I get Jeff Sims is talented.
You're a sprained ankle away from having to be the guy. And plus, Casey's the type of guy. I'm just going to keep saying this. When he's not playing, it makes you uncomfortable that you're not using him.
I still think he's the starter. I do. I like Jeff Sims. I think we'll see Jeff Sims, whether in packages or in, when's the last time a Nebraska quarterback stayed healthy for an entire season? It's been a long time, right? So being the second guy is not the worst place to be if you want to get on the field.
Especially with this offense that I think they want to run.
Right, yeah. And so I don't think Casey Thompson's going anywhere. I still think he's your starter. And then you've still got Jeff Sims for another year after that, where you can have him be your full-time starter once Casey's gone. But it kind of goes to what I'm saying you mentioned competition in these situations. It's not just quarterback, but having 2 or 3 guys at running back that you feel comfortable with. I agree. Ramir can't be your bell cow just because of size and all of that, but he can be a third down back, so you feel good about that. You've got Anthony Grant, Gabe Irvin, A.J. Allen. Those are 3 guys that you're like, yeah, those guys could all maybe play for me, all maybe start for me. So there's some competition there you feel good about, whereas it's not that long ago that we had to move Wandale Robinson to running back because there was no one else, right? So you're right. Spring should be about these competitions and having guys get better because they are going against each other.
Who did you leave with thinking are your top 3 or 4 wide receivers?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't feel well, I can give you like 2.
Probably Kemp and Washington.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the spot where I was like, I need more there.
So for me, all spring long, listeners can validate this. I'm the most uncomfortable about wide receiver.
Yeah, I don't feel great there. And
and all everybody's been telling me is that we have so many options. I'm like, that's great. It's great. But you got to catch football.
So there, it seems like betting really heavily on we have so many guys that a couple of them almost have to pop. But at this point, I bet you could throw a dart and they'd have as good of an idea of who those couple of guys would be because you don't know.
Is it Betts? Is it Bullock? Is it
some of just the brand new guys?
Is it Hahn? Is it?
Yeah.
Are
you even counting like Fedoni as a pass catcher, even though he's not a wide receiver?
No, because I think that tight end room is on lock.
I think it's pretty good.
It's
The wide receiver room, I question a lot. So we might see a lot of different looking personnel where we've got like Bonner and Fedoni and Gilbert out there all at the same time because you don't feel great about wide receivers.
We'll come back. Well, what do we feel good about? We saw Minnesota. Hopefully you watched a little Wisconsin. Maybe
Colorado.
Maybe you saw the reality show.
They
broadcast that from the field.
They did. They made up their own scoring system. ESPN made up that scoring system.
Is there anybody more perfect for that than Griffin?
Oh, he
totally played that up. We'll talk about that because 2 of the 3 teams, well, all of them were on the schedule, but 2 in the first 2 games, Minnesota, Colorado. What do we think? More on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
I mean, as you know, football, quarterback's live in the game. So, I mean, I've always been one to want to be live in practice, just because you feel like it's more of a game rep. Because, you know, as quarterback, you naturally going to
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes.
the coaches can only do so much. Develop to be a player-led team.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
I mean, as you know, football, quarterback's live in the game. So, I mean, I've always been one to want to be live in practice, just because you feel like it's more of a game rep. Because, you know, as quarterback, you naturally going, like, if you're not live, you naturally going to dial it back a little bit, like, as far as running the ball and stuff. But once coach decided to make us live, I feel like that helped us a lot, because the intensity in the room picked up and everybody was like feeling game reps and they were starting to play everything up again.
Yeah, I always kind of like when quarterbacks want to go live. And Jeff Sims is a big fan of going live. Welcome back to Coffee and Cream in the Morning. Listen, brought to you by the fine folks. You looking for a little advice? You need to get to Dyer Law. Personal injury, workers' comp. Dyer Law's got you covered. Great website at dyer.law, or you can give them a buzz. It's 402. I always like to give the area code for some reason. 393-7529. Well, it could be 531.
It's true.
Trusted professionals guarding against liability. And you know who is not a liability? Our next guest, because he loves to talk college football. From the Sporting News, we've got Bill Bender joining us. Bill, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, so the coolest thing about you may be that you're a Coach Solich fan. How ironic is that?
No, well, I went to Ohio University.
That's right.
So, and I'm by no accident wearing an OU sweatshirt right now. And we I tell people this all the time, and I know he has fans in Nebraska, obviously, but I consider him one of the best 5 hires ever.
I mean, what he did at Ohio University, the stability, the success, the bowl appearances, the first-class way he did it. Had a chance to sit with him a couple times down there too, and he is just so humble, so nice, so gracious. So I was very happy to see him get honored this weekend. I know that he has a huge section of OU fans and we are OU, by the way, not Oklahoma, they definitely appreciated everything he did.
Yeah, his humility, I think, is perhaps one of his best traits, and people just gravitate towards him, even though he doesn't give you a lot with his words. He always leaves you wanting to be around him more.
And I think that translated in his coaching style, especially at Ohio, where there was a lot of no nonsense, not a lot of, you're not going to get a lot of jokes. You may get the occasional one-liner, but like I said, I mean, Ohio University, we were fortunate. When I was down there, we had Jim Grobe, who's another first-class guy, by the way, and we get Frank Solich and now Tim Albin. So, and I do know, I mean, we knew that when Frank was there, that he had a cross-section of fans in Nebraska still following him, and he was able to recruit some guys from Nebraska to Ohio that did well. So, again, I think Matt Rhule did a great job of kind of moving forward, right? You pay attention to the past at Nebraska, but it's also time to move forward. And the live reps in the spring game, to me, is an indicator of that's a program where you're trying to get buy-in and those kind of things. It sounds like they have it.
Bill, I wanted to ask you about the actual game in and of itself. Obviously, they did the great Frank Solich tribute and everything like that. When you're looking at a Nebraska spring game, kind of the first glimpse into the Matt Rhule era, was there anything you felt like you learned from that you didn't know before?
No, I think it'll be similar. I mean, offensively, Sims or whoever the quarterback is, I think that's going to be one of the things to watch, that their offense will probably rely on the running game, set up the pass, not do anything out of the ordinary, and you look for defensive toughness. I know in past years, Nebraska's had some guys that could get after the quarterback, but, in general, had trouble defending the pass, had general defending in crunch time. So I just think Matt Rhule's as a makeover artist, which is what he did at Temple and Baylor, could take in Lincoln, especially in the Big Ten West.
So of the four, and all three are Nebraska opponents, two are right out of the gates, right? So we saw Minnesota right before Nebraska's spring game. Colorado had center stage on ESPN. Wisconsin was after Nebraska. You got the mainstay of Minnesota. They went indoors, say what you will. Haven't had the greatest of off seasons. Colorado's got the greatest PR campaign going. Wisconsin's got a new head coach as well. And then there's Nebraska. Of what you think we'll see in the fall, rank the accuracy of what we saw in the spring games from those four teams.
Well, I mean, Minnesota, I haven't watched that one yet. I've got to get caught up. I've watched several. That's one I have on the DVR. Wisconsin's the one that I think could take a huge jump with Luke Fickell, because
they look crisp.
They've got talent development with Fickell. I remind people this. The last two NFL drafts, Cincinnati had 13 guys drafted. That's not including this year. And they're not just like sixth-round picks. We're talking about like Sauce Gardner and Desmond Ridder and Kobe Bryant. These are players. So if he brings that to Wisconsin, they could be very real. I do think it's awesome that Nebraska and Colorado were both in the limelight. I think Nebraska, the goal I felt like 1990 again. Makes me feel young.
Yeah, it's nasty. I was a part of it. It's not nice.
Right. And Colorado, they don't have the talent on that roster yet. They have some stars. They have Shadur Sanders. They have Travis Hunter is going to be very good. He's not going to be very good. He is very good. But I don't know if they have the depth on that roster yet. Plus, their schedule's brutal.
So let me ask you this. Ravi and I were having this conversation off air because I grew up a Deion Sanders fan. I had the poster. He was over the Golden Gate Bridge, and it was on my wall. I would like to go have lunch or maybe hang out for an afternoon. I'm not sure I want him to be my coach. How important is it that he built the staff the way that he did, but also that Deion knows his self-awareness seems to be, I hired former head coaches for a reason. I'll be the hype man.
You know what? People have their mind made up on Deion, but I'm telling you, there is a lot more substance than people think with what he's doing. With that staff that he hired, like you mentioned, there's experience all over the place. I mean, Sean Lewis was a very good head coach at Kent State. Yep. I mean, they were good and a good developer of offensive talent. So I think Deion, like you said, the hype man, the show, the cameras find him even when he's not looking, but it's the same thing as when he was a player. When you get past the flash, there's a no-nonsense all-star. And I do think, like I said, 5 wins would be a win for them this year if they went like 5-7. But if he continues to accumulate talent, that's coming.
So can it work? All right, he lost 2 of his better players from the weekend. The following day of the spring game, he gets the decommit from Jawan Johnson, who's one of the top two-way guys in the country. Can it simply work where even though you're not hard to find, it could be a revolving door?
Yeah, and there's a lot of attrition in first year, right? So there was a lot made of his speech and everything there. And now up until the last couple of weeks, they had several players come in the transfer portal and not many leave. So apparently, this is a sign that some of these guys, the attrition that comes, it's a little higher than usual, which would be a concern, but it's also a first-year program trying to weed out guys. But you know what I mean? This is going to happen. So I hear the comparison being made a lot that is this the next iteration of like the U at Miami? There is a long way to go before we can even get there, because remember, Miami was recruiting out of a high school recruiting base that was absurd and still is absurd.
Yeah.
Bill, I wanted to ask you one more thing about the Colorado situation, because obviously when you've got that type of personality at the helm there, do you think that how long do you think it can take for them to actually win and that still plays well?
Well, that's the question. I think for me, if they get to 5 and then you get to, it's the same questions at Nebraska. I think Nebraska and Colorado are so interesting to me because we know what the expectations are. I've watched these programs win national titles. I've watched them be dominant in my lifetime. At the same time, my son's 13. When I tell him, hey, Nebraska, they were really good in the 90s, man. Like you weren't beating them. And he just kind of looks at me like, what? And now this is out of Central Ohio. So a 13-year-old view of the Big Ten is probably Ohio State, Michigan, and maybe Penn State. Mm-hmm. Nebraska still needs to get back in that conversation.
Bill, before we let you go, who's more apt to keep their litany of quality quarterbacks, Texas or Georgia?
I think Texas has a plan that could work because Quinn Ewers looked good in the spring game, and Arch Manning, if they can allow him to develop for a year and Quinn Ewers has a big season and goes to the NFL, that would be best case scenario. I do think Brock Vandegrift over the next week at Georgia is a name to watch.
Yep.
Because if he's not going to start, he could land somewhere. And I just wrote about Alabama. Like, Alabama's another huge question. Are they really going to go in with Jalen Milroe and Ty
okay.
Right. And that's why I'm saying you're exactly right. They look good enough to win 10 games, but they're
that's
not
just okay at Alabama.
Not good enough, right? Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what they entertain in the next week.
Do you like the transfer portal timing? I know they kind of told us it was about academics and the calendar. Boy, is it a grind though with the dates being moved.
I'm just going to laugh too. Yeah, it's not about the academics. It is going to be like a lot of decisions for some of these quarterbacks in particular over the next 7 days. I don't know if there's a guy that's going to go in that tilts the program, but it certainly could affect some depth charts. There's no doubt.
One of the best. Bill, we didn't get you long enough. Looking forward to catching up.
Hey, no problem, guys. Take care.
That's Bill Benner with the Sporting News. Coming back, Ravi and I, little Brady Oltmans, a lot of coffee and cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Developed to be a player-led team. Coach Rule did his job. Coach Rule and his coaching staff did his job in the winter/spring to instill the foundation of our culture here. Now it's our job to accept that culture and embrace it and apply it within each other, distribute within each other. So not only we hear things from the coaches, we hear things from ourselves, from the leaders on the team, from the captains on this team. We apply that. We the one that does the discipline. We the one that holds everybody accountable, not just the coaches. You know, let them coach football. Let us coach us.
MJ Sherman with one of the lines from the weekend. I always like to say, how long does it take players to sound like
the coaches?
The coaches?
Yeah, not long.
And that's the next phase of it, though, going from coach-led to player-led, as MJ Sherman coming off a pretty good Saturday. There's obviously some things that I know that he would like to work on, but a really, really good snippet for what I think MJ Sherman has to offer. And listen, if you're looking for some gear, get to Alumni Hall. It's your ultimate Husker shopping experience. Large selection. You can grab Adidas, Champion, Columbia, gifts, accessories, plus 10% off in-store. And you can earn cash back with a hall pass, kind of what you always used to use to skip at Miller North over there. 2 great Lincoln locations on Peace Street and the South Point Pavilion. Remember, it's alumnihall.com. It's Alumni Hall. It's where Husker fans shop. And where we're going to shop for some Husker news.
Yeah.
We're going to go with Brady Oltmans.
Our guy.
B.O. from Hail Varsity. Good morning. How are you, Brady?
Doing well. The return of the cold weather didn't treat me and the dog well on the walks yesterday, but, we're doing all right.
Man, you move fast. I kind of enjoy watching you over the weekend, not in some weird sort of way, but, man, you get to where you're going, man. You are not a half-stepper.
Well, especially at the spring game, you've got so much going on the field and everything you want to see, but then, that elevator can move kind of slow. So you really got to get a pep in your step if you want to get back up to your spot in time.
Old school Big Daddy Kane. Ain't no half-stepping.
We haven't really gotten to the recruiting part of this weekend much on the show yet. There's, believe it or not, been a lot to talk about.
We've barely touched other sports yet, Brady.
It's true. But there was, obviously, it was a big recruiting weekend in terms of guys being on campus. Kind of I thought, surprise commitment before the game from Willis McGahee. What was your takeaway? Were you expecting that before the game, or did that take you kind of off guard as well?
The commitment before the game kind of surprised me. I knew Willis really liked Nebraska. I think he liked the coaching staff. He liked the environment. But him committing to Nebraska at all wasn't that surprising. It definitely was surprising, the timing of it and going before the game. I don't know, at that point you think that you'd kind of wait and watch and see how things go, but he liked it enough to where he could watch the spring game and with the 66,000 people there and just soak it all in. I thought maybe they'd get 1, maybe 2 commitments Sunday, after the game, but it sounds like there have been a couple of teases. I know Ian Flint, he wasn't there, but he had teased something about big news coming soon. He's one that is, I would almost say Nebraska has the inside track and lapping people on. His family flies a Husker flag outside their house and they live in Texas. You know what I mean? I just think that he's close and he'd be a really good get for them at tight end. But they had some 3 dozen recruits on the sidelines there. So you got a good chance of any one of them.
Yeah, it was packed, to say the least. And you guys, whatever. Can all be about Nebraska winning games with McGahee the fourth potentially. But for me, his dad is in my top 6 all-time favorite backs, along with 2 other Canes and Clinton Portis and Edgerrin James.
I thought you were going to go Frank Gore on me.
No. You're a Niners guy. Why would I throw you a bone? Brady, but seriously, though, is this does this have a chance to be the weekend that the 25th wasn't?
In a sense, yeah. I'm not sure how many guys are that close to making the leap, because the issue for me is the timing of the weekend. Some guys might just want to wait and drag it into the summer for their official visits and then make their decisions after that. It's just timing wise, it's kind of close. But you've got a couple of guys. They even had a surprise visitor, Brian Robinson, from Fitch there in Youngstown, Ohio. He's a high-end 4-star edge rusher that is very closely linked to Michigan and some pretty prominent schools. And then he just makes a surprise stop by Nebraska, and he's pretty blown away by it. The spring game just gave a lot of people an opportunity. The same thing with the late March junior day gives guys a chance who didn't really consider Nebraska at all to come in for an event, soak it in, see what it's all about. And now, Nebraska is a little bit more prominent on people's radars. So in same thing. I feel the same way with the junior day. If you don't get some immediate commitments out of it, it's still a very prominent thing for Nebraska because you're popping up on more radars and you're a little bit more likely of a destination for some of the guys after they've seen what Nebraska's all about.
Brady, let's rewind just a few months when we were wrapping up the 2023 class. Some of those guys already enrolled and on campus when we saw them on Saturday. What did you think of the performance of guys like Princewell, Cam Lenhart, and Maverick Noonan, who we got to see featured pretty prominently that are, I like to call them pre-freshmen. They're not even quite college age yet. What did you think of their performance from this last class?
Oh, man. I mean, they jumped out right away. I don't really think any of them were all that surprising. You talk to people in the spring, and they were really, popping off the page right away to everybody. And in practice, they played really well. I knew Princewell and Cameron, right when they signed back in December, their coaches were really high on him. They thought Princewell and Cameron could both, make pretty good contributions right away. Maverick kind of, once he got his footing and got used to the game speed of the college game, he was disruptive and everything too. So like Matt Rule said afterwards, there's no reason that they can't compete for a spot in fall. There's nothing stopping them. They're showing they're right up to speed. They're showing they can do some good things. It's just the summer is going to be really important for them. And Sincere Seflulia at corner, he stepped up and made some big tackles and everything too as an early enrollee. And then you can throw in Kai Wallen, who he's a JUCO guy, but just 1 year, but he's an early enrollee, so you can kind of fit him into a lot of those guys. For that being their first big time college football game, quote unquote game, they all played really well.
So Nebraska staff may not have had a dream, right? I have a dream, but they did have a vision, right? So of the guys that are familiar faces in new spaces, and I give you AJ Rollins, Tagovailoa, and Janarian Bonner. Who was the most impressive in terms of casting a vision and then seeing it kind of play out real time as all those guys had position changes?
Oh man, that's a really good question because they all showed, glimpses of it. There were a couple of times where I see, somebody make a hit on the edge and I say like, oh, that was a good one. And I kind of double check down because the number's not popping into my head. I'm like, oh, that was AJ.
Bonkers. God, that was hard.
And then like Brody gets a big hit on a kickoff return on those kind of abbreviated kickoffs. And then, Bonner's seeing him in that game scenario, you see why the coaching staff is so high on him. They said that he could be a full-time fullback. He's just a really dynamic guy. And in the NFL, fullbacks do a little bit more than what they did at Nebraska back in the 90s, but he's still capable of doing that baseline blocking, lead block, get a little bit of steam built up before he gets to the first, second level. So just in scheme wise of what they want to do, I think Bonner stands out because he unlocks so much more potential within the offense. But yeah, all of those guys really, really made the most of their chance.
You realize that this, I don't think this is hyperbole, and you guys are a lot more level-headed than me, but I'm dead serious with what I'm about to say. They could have extended Bonner's career by another 4 years by this position change.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that because he wasn't going to be a wideout, and he's not just a tight end, but casting that vision, he could have been on his way out without a position change, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's such a loaded position at tight end and at receiver now. But this coaching staff is so good at finding things that fit their skill sets. And then by moving him in there, he's so unique and dynamic, and then they can coach him up to the basics of it. It just unlocks so much more potential. And you're more likely to find a dozen good receivers or tight ends out there. Finding a good fullback that can do all of that is a little bit harder to find in the college game. So right there, you might have just gave that guy a career. You know what I mean?
Brady, I wanted to ask you, we talked about some of the early enrollees, but I want to take it past either the recruiting class and the transfers. And let's take Casey Thompson off the table here. Out of guys that we didn't see on Saturday, who are you kind of most itching to see in the fall now that you've seen a little bit of glimpse of what it might look like?
Well, this might be a cop out, but I'll go with it because it's still Monday morning for me. Luke Reimer, Nick Henrich. I mean, both of those guys I'm curious to see what they look like in that defense, because when you think of them and you look at they're obviously veteran and experienced, but when you see their skill sets, I don't know if you'd really like associate, just strictly like stats wise them to fit in with that system, but they're veteran football players. They're heady. They know what to expect. They're good game planners. For the most part, assured tacklers at times last year. I'm really curious to see how they fit in with that defense and how that kind of moves around when you've got two guys who worked really well in tandem together last year and have significant, linebacker experience in the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's interesting because you could make the case, all things considered. Coach White had the most difficult job on Saturday, right? He's missing 3 guys that have starting experience. He's the new guy. And Brady, I think he was probably the most handicapped in terms of what he could show and what he couldn't show defensively. Like I think he knows Minnesota, they're going to be looking at old Syracuse film. So why not keep a steady Eddie and do what they did at Syracuse, even though
maybe that's not what they're going to do at Nebraska.
It has been tinkered with tremendously since he's been in Lincoln.
Yeah, I kind of go back to what he want. Same with Satterfield. They wanted to throw as much as they could at those guys right away in the spring ball, see what their retention was, and dial back. You kind of heard right at the end of that second to last week of spring ball, White said, yeah, we're kind of scaling back the install because we want guys to be confident and assured in what they're doing now so that we can properly assess their skill sets and, where they're going to fit in, where they fit best. And I think you just look at the tape a little bit from Saturday. I haven't gone through and gave it a good comb over. I'll do that later in the week. But, man, just the stunts and the pickups and where they're coming from, you just see, like, you just get a glimpse of it. And it's things like MJ Sherman lining up, head up on the tight end, and he does an inside stunt.
He slams all the way down to B gap. That's a long way to go.
And he meets Anthony Grant 3 yards deep in the backfield. He even shucks the pulling guard. You know what I mean? Like, just things like that. And of course, MJ is a remarkable athlete, and he can afford to use some luxuries like that. But just those little stunts and movements that defense can do. Seeing it on film in the teaching clinic videos that I've watched of Tony White this winter fascinated me. Seeing it on Saturday kind of it made me feel better of like, okay, we're getting this, and this is going to be kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, because on the rewatch, I'll be curious. I bet you. Nah, I won't say I bet you, but it seemed like crazy pressures. But I bet you they didn't bring +5 more. I bet you they didn't bring more than 5 or than 10% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seemed like they were coming from everywhere, but they still had 6 back in coverage in some capacity.
Yeah, they just hit you at different spots. You don't really know when it's coming. They just pick their spots. They're just really strategic because they didn't, of course, they have a lot of defensive backs. They didn't want to leave them out on an island and potentially, risk injury to anybody on offense. They were just really strategic in how it went. And yeah, it looked really good.
Of the new face of the old faces in new places, I give you Collier, Judy, Wynn, and I'm going to throw MJ Sherman into the bunch. Based on what your expectation level was, who was the most impressive?
Who most impressive? I'd almost say Elijah Judy because I was kind of curious.
He moves a lot better than I thought.
Yeah, and I thought they'd play him a little bit more head up, on the inside than on the edge. But still, watching him move in that space and watching him line up like that was really impressive. He's really good with his hands. He's really good commanding his space. Shucking blockers when he needed to. I think he moved and popped really well. And he's another one of those guys that he was up there in tackles, but by nature, what he does should not get a lot of tackles. So that really stood out to me. All of those guys, I think, really, really had good games and really kind of validated their existence on this roster in spots for the summer and fall. But Elijah is the one that kind of stood out most between them.
Brady, you mentioned that they kind of threw a lot of stuff at him and started scaling back. Damon felt like they had to scale back a lot on defense. If you had to give a percentage on the offensive side of the ball, how much do you think we saw of the offense as a whole versus what we'll see in the fall?
I would say they probably threw, at least in terms of basic looks, probably gave over half of what you'll see because Rule was pretty open book about that. He's like, I know guys, I know some coaches just won't really want to put a lot on film in the spring ball for opposing defenses, but that's a luxury Nebraska doesn't have. They're trying to get good at the football they want to play now. But I still think that and it's still spring ball. You're only limited to 15 practices, so there's only so much you can get in. You can probably put in a little bit more in the spring and in preseason camp. But I would say over half of what you'd expect to see in Nebraska in terms of offensive install and formations were put in. But there's just so much more of like the detail, the next level work and little wrinkles that you can do to expand the playbook that they'll probably put in the summer and fall.
Brady, I'll get you out of here on this last one for me. So when you started in spring and what kind of had you captivated, who you wanted to see versus where you made your mind up, your focus was going to be on Saturday. When it's all said and done, and this is before your like extensive rewatch, is the coach that you're the most captivated by changed? And if it has, how many different times?
Oh, man. It starts at the baseline. I really wanted to watch Terrence Knighton, and that defensive line looked really good. So I do feel a little bit validated there. They didn't
playing guys in hockey shifts. Remember when we were scared in February about the D-line? Now he's talking about playing
2 or 3 of them.
Hockey line changes.
It's a luxury you have when you got all those capable guys, you know what I mean?
Or you're developing. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
We were petrified. We were terrified.
Like, do we have 5
of D-line? And now they're talking about playing them in droves.
Yeah, and then I think Donovan Raiola and that offensive line, I think you take a few steps back from it. They've obviously, I think you look on film, they've got things that they want to clean up, but they were shorthanded in what they were able to do because they had, Teddy wasn't available. And then they have 2 guys go down, but both Jacob and Turner come around, neither of them serious. They come back in. So I think you kind of call that a day. They get good reps in, all of them moving around. So I think overall lined up, especially against that defense and all that they wanted to do and showed, I mean, they're not going to scheme for another defense like that the rest of the year. You know what I mean? So overall, you can probably pat yourself on the back, say nobody got really hurt. A lot of things to work on, but kind of pack it in and see what you can do in the season.
Brady, good stuff. We got to catch you on Monday after the rewatch because there's a couple of other things I want to get into in the weeds, right? Guys that were flashing on the second level and who needs to get better, man. Enjoy the week, enjoy the rewatch, and take some notes for me for next Monday.
Will do, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brady. That's Brady Oltmans from Hail Varsity. With all the documentaries and conspiracy theories about Tupac, I know he had his weekend. But are all eyes on Garrett McGuire again? All eyes on me. It seems like it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's...
Yes, sir.
And he's got the young guys coming in, right? Doss and Coleman.
Yes. And he's going to need some of those guys because whatever was out there on Saturday, I don't think is going to cut it.
Are you kind of poo-pooing it? Maybe they weren't running all their route.
No, so that's
up to get back in the building.
That's fair.
Hot fries, baby.
But there was some drops I didn't love.
Yeah.
That was the thing that was more to me than whether the routes they were running or the kind of maybe conservative play calling or whatever. Because I don't think we talked about this earlier. I don't think they were conservative with formations.
I don't either.
I do think they were conservative with play calls.
Concepts.
That's tough on everybody.
So I wasn't even really harping on the routes and things like that and what they were actually running, but there were quite a few catchable balls that were not brought in. And listen, I get it spring. I get you're going to have some timing issues. I get that. But didn't love to see it, right? It's kind of the same thing with the fumbles, right? You understand that it's spring, that, might be a little sloppy. Still don't love to see it, right? Just because there might be valid reasons for it happening doesn't mean it doesn't still need to be addressed.
Well, you think there'll be any of that like Colorado hangover where you had some guys that had big spring games and then kind of in some cold shots, some goodbyes, hit the portal with Lamonius Craig. And I mean, they had a couple.
Yeah.
You had a top DB leave. You had your top wide receiver leave. That's your second DB in 4 days. You have a decommit from another DB. Is there a guy like that you kind of wonder for Nebraska?
Ooh, that I worry about leaving?
That is kind of was a as a quasi frontline guy?
No, I don't think so.
Thanks, Shane.
Thanks, Coach McGuire.
I don't have one.
I know AJ Allen was the hot take rumor going into it, but
yeah,
I think that was more because people didn't really know what was wrong with him.
Right. I don't have one that jumps to the front of my brain. Do you have one?
No, you can't keep everybody in the defensive backfield, can you?
Probably not. I mean, probably not.
I mean, it's
you probably can keep everyone.
And he's
on
got
the
some
D-line.
guys that kind of came off the radar.
Yes,
that we weren't expecting that are kind of developing. That DB room has got to be crowded as all get out.
But I don't look at any of those guys that I think either played well last year or played well in the spring. That I think one of the guys that played well is going to leave.
How about guys getting off the milk carton like Deshaun Singleton?
That's nice. You like to see guys get opportunities because it feels like not just with Coach Frost, but it felt like it happened with Pelini a lot too, where guys would just get totally ghosted, and we maybe never got a good reason for it.
So you
talking to a ghost.
So something that I think is a conscious effort because they want to maximize the roster and be able to evaluate. They built the defense in such a way where you don't have to know every check
to be able to get on the
field.
be
able to get on the field.
Which, by the way, is what a lot of good programs do. Because you can't tell me.
I've
been saying this for years, okay? You can't tell me that every 18-year-old 5-star that goes to Alabama and LSU knows every single check in the defense. But guess what? They still play football.
Yeah.
And then somehow at Nebraska, I get you're not getting the 5-star guys, but these 3- and 4-star guys that we think maybe have some talent somehow get milk cartoned for 3 years because they don't know every single check, and you end up with some walk-on safety back there that gets burned in a big game because you're like, well, yeah, he's a walk-on. He probably shouldn't have been there.
It's definitely intentional.
Good.
They want athleticism to be able to show. So, and I said,
you mean they're finding a way to get their best athletes on the field? That's crazy talk.
I said this after quarter in Ravi Lulla. I said this after the coaches clinic. Listening to Coach White, there are some things that he plays that are supposed to be situational, like goal line, like he was talking about bare fronts. He was so good on what they want to do on the back end. I'm trying to talk our coaches into playing some version of that in the field of play.
Ooh,
like that's how flexible.
Well, that's the whole point
I
of the
think
defense, right?
His scheme is.
That's the whole point, is to be like flexible, malleable, adjustable.
I thought low-key he was the MVP of Saturday.
The defense certainly was, I thought.
I really, and he knew the least, and he's not a Coach Rule guy. I absolutely think the MVP of Saturday was Coach White.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we'll see how interesting it gets. Plenty of sports to catch up on after the break on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
To me, on offense, there's no excuse for fumbles. There's no excuse. I can live with an interception here or there, and it will result in you not playing. To be quite honest. Now we're not here to play in fear. It's not one time and you're done, but you have to have the ability to protect the football. And it looked like I looked up on the jumbotron because they kept going over to review them, and I think one of them, the gentleman said to me like, "Hey, had we reviewed that, it would have been incomplete. The one on Harbor Road that was a touchdown, it was an incomplete pass." But I knew we were going to play a lot of plays today, and I didn't want to be out there for 4 hours going through instant replays. So I just said, "Hey, let's play it like it's 1985, and you're making the call." So, we can't have those fumbles. But I love the fact that they got their hands on the ball. That's really, really important to me. I mean, if we can take the ball away, and what I talked about at halftime, Gabe can tell you, you in a good mood or what? All right, good. Gabe can tell you, I talked about to the defense, like, hey, the red defense, it's not that you're playing badly. It's just that they keep starting with the ball on the 30-yard line because your offense keeps turning the ball over. So I'm trying to, always talk about situational football and complementary football. People say that, but that's what happened. The fumbled snaps and all that, that's, I'd have to go back and look at it. We're rotating a lot of guys through there, but we don't make excuses. That just can't happen. And, if it weren't for 66,000 people, I would have thrown my headset on a normal Saturday because that was really frustrating to me. But you know what? It's also important that our guys learn to keep their composure and play through it. And, we kind of fixed it and moved on.
Barely. I watched him close, and I don't even see that well.
Yeah.
I wanted to borrow G-Sharp's Binocs, but I can tell when the headsets were coming off.
Oh, yeah.
And I talked about it a little during the broadcast, and he said it again.
You in a good mood or what? Not good.
That reminds me of the student or the player that's talking when you're talking. You say, is there something you want to share with the rest of us? Like, no, I'm good. Because he's fired up right there. Like, don't kid yourself. Like,
So was that directed towards somebody?
yeah,
Irvin, I think.
he's talking to Gabe.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
You in a good mood or what? Good.
like,
That's funny.
and he's like that. So even like at the coaches clinic, he kind of low key got at some guys for being on their phone.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, and we were trying to whisper. I'm like, hey, you know, there's some things he tells you. He doesn't play with this. He doesn't play with that. Like, just make sure you're paying attention. You know, give him eyes like he's old school. Sure enough, about 2 minutes in, hey man, you know,
Someone has a phone call here. I own.
that's the kind of stuff he does. He'll take his shot, man.
So let me ask you about this, because we haven't really touched on this part of it for most of the show yet here.
Well, sports happen.
A lot of sports happened. I don't know if you know this. Nebraska had a spring game this weekend.
Did they?
It was a big event
Everybody
here.
knows it's spring again.
How concerned are you about how sloppy it looked at times? I mean, I know the fumbles are the big part of that. There was some other stuff, obviously the drops from the wide receivers.
Let me put it to you like this.
Yeah.
Remember I said Wisconsin looked a lot like they looked during practice? Nebraska looked a lot how they looked during practice.
So this has been a problem.
He talked about it probably, once a week during his pressers?
Yeah.
Can't put the ball on the carpet. But
so how concerned are you?
So ultimately not very. Why? Because I think it's a culmination of two things. Number one, these guys are getting underneath center way more than they ever have.
Sure.
Right? You have guys like Menning snapping the ball that aren't traditional centers. So the timing, especially in quick, short handoff game. So fullback run game is predicated on, you won't get this anywhere. This is just on Coffee and Cream. Because nobody talks about this stuff. They just assume they take it for granted.
Yeah.
In short handoff game, QB center exchanges underneath center are imperative. Right? Fullback's only 3 yards from you.
He gets on you quick.
He's on you.
Yeah.
So being clean is important.
Right.
That I'm not worried about, right? Because a lot of these guys, they're literally teaching to take snaps underneath center.
So you're talking about there's a tendency to maybe rush a little bit when
when it's not clean, you make up for.
Okay.
Right? If it's low, if I got to stay with it a little longer because it didn't get to me, the fullback's on top of me or he's too wide. You know, if he's a gap and a half over, I may not get to him, so I reach.
Yep. Okay.
You know, one of them was a lead blocker hits the ball on the exchange because he's late pushing away from the center. Those kinds of things don't bother me so much as, you know, like a Tyhan strip or AJ Allen lose, you know, a guy coming over the top or something like that, right? So
those are in-game bad ones, right? It's easier to fix the timing, was what you're saying, than it is to fix getting stripped after a catch.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I was talking to Coach
and most of them were timing.
I was talking to Coach Solich in the press box about that. And remember, he coached a team that put it on the carpet 49 times in a season. Didn't lose them all, but put it on the carpet.
Is that 98 or 99?
9, I think.
Yeah.
50.
They're probably playing for a national championship if they don't fumble it that much.
50, almost 50 times, right? And he said, you know,
we're talking 4 a game.
Right. When you have so many different guys playing and you want everybody to get reps and it's about timing, he said some of this is going to happen. He said pay closer attention to when it's in contact and in traffic because the timing things he thinks that you can fix
are fixable.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So I'm not,
and that's a good distinction,
right? It's again, I'm not nitpicking. I'm just telling you how it goes, right?
So
you're just talking to a football head.
Yes. So we're talking.
It's not just 8 on the ground.
It's talking 2 in contact versus 6 that we're timing. Is that right?
Roughly
in the neighborhood.
Roughly, probably 5 and 3. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, and so when I think quarterbacks just instead of eating it and getting down, they want to make a play and reach a ball to a fullback or something like that. You can fix that.
Sure.
But how about the Alcoa? You make the call. You make the call. You weren't near born yet, but there used to be these replays that would happen on the commercial. It was Alcoa, right, Shane? You make the call.
I remember those commercials.
And it was before instant replay. And they would show you a play, and then they said, what happened? You make the call.
Okay.
That's what he was saying as opposed to going to replay.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because we thought it was going to be a good time because the Big Ten announced that they're going to centralize instant replay. You got a command center.
Right.
So they were there, wanting to practice it. Coach Rule was like, yeah, that first quarter was exceptionally long. We're not doing this
I'm not trying
again.
to be here for 4 hours.
Let's expedite this deal. And he pegged it. I called him on the way down early, you know. He was like, hey, what time are you getting here? It's like 7:22. And I was like, not yet. And he's like, hey, you know, you want to go over anything? And so I was like, yeah, hey, I'll call you in the car. So I asked him about the number of plays.
Yeah.
He almost nailed it. He said, I want 65. He said, I want between 60, 65 snaps. We got to learn to play with this new clock and the rules. Do you know how many snaps the offense had at the half?
How many?
65.
There you go.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But it slowed down considerably in the second half because I think with about 4 minutes to play, it was like at 38. But things happen situationally and you wanted to change. And I think he was talking best case scenario. But those kinds of things I think can go away. I think for him, his concerns going in were the concerns going out. Place kicking.
Sure.
And taking care of the football.
And those are big ones.
Man.
Especially in Nebraska recently.
And I get it. Help is on the way. And you know the weird thing about Bleak Road is he was good late.
He was. Yeah.
Right? Like that wouldn't be some as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
It came down to Nebraska and Iowa for Tristan Albano.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Iowa almost got him based on the fact that he would have a chance to win the job sooner.
Well, I think he's got a chance to win it pretty soon here, too.
Because of the way that Bleak Road finished the season, right?
I think a lot of people assumed Bleak Road would be fine this year.
And they're like, oh, hey, you know what? Magnum. Well, they didn't say Magnum TA. I say Magnum TA. They're like, hey, Tristan, you got a hammer. You could be our kickoff specialist, this, that, and the other. But now he's like coming to win a place kicking job.
Why wouldn't he?
And so if they get that set, it'll be good competition between he and Bleak Road. And you keep the ball off the carpet.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, and I'll be curious to see how many people run with this later on their shows or in the media or print. The real MVP of that game was Tony White.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for a low-key positive, I talked about this in the first segment, the Bermuda Triangle surrounding ball carriers. Look how many helmets Nebraska got to the ball. You get takeaways by being in position.
Yes.
You don't get turnovers or takeaways by being out of position. That's why Nebraska couldn't get a ton of takeaways because you're only getting one guy on the screen.
Yeah.
You get three, you got a chance.
Because how often do you see one guy kind of gets around?
It happened to Ask AJ Allen. It was the second guy that got him.
So the first guy gets around an ankle or a leg. Second guy comes in, pops the ball out, right? And the third guy comes in, recovers, right? That's the triangle you're talking about. Is you have three guys, boom, boom,
inside,
boom,
outside, over the top,
that give you an opportunity to create turnovers.
I mean, they get to the flipping football.
Nebraska's been lucky to have one guy at the football lately.
It's like, hey, they're getting gashed by Northwestern. It's like, how do we only have one guy in the screen, right? Like,
if that.
Or North Dakota.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. That's an FCS team and only an okay one.
No bueno. And then quietly, the development of depth. All of a sudden, we're not talking so much about D-line.
I'm talking about it, but for a good reason.
Underappreciated. And remember, he wasn't a rule guy. That's not bad. Sports Cleanup, next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Things you wanted us to get. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Things you wanted us to get to from the weekend, but we didn't.
Clean up on aisle 6.
It's the Coffee and Cream Sports Cleanup on Hail Varsity Radio.
All the things that we didn't get to, we should have got to it a long time ago. So many things happening over the weekend. And
this was not on us. This was a busy weekend.
It was. We didn't get to NHL playoffs, the NBA playoffs, Nebraska's baseball weekend,
the fight,
Garcia having. You know what I thought he was going to say in the postgame?
What's that?
If you've ever sparred with anybody that's hit you in that area,
the liver punch that they're talking, yeah.
Not only does it shut you down immediately, he's lucky he didn't use the restroom.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a lot of times that's what happens.
There's like an involuntary response.
Yep, no question.
Yeah.
And so when he was explaining what happened in the post the match interview, I thought that's what he was going to say, but he ended up saying, "I'll just leave it at that." That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Because immediately that's what I thought.
Right.
I was like, somebody's got me with one of those. Like,
yeah.
You're like, hey man, be right back. Right.
Yeah.
You can't help it.
No. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, and it hurt. You get hit so hard, and it just immediately shuts you down. And by immediate, I mean it takes a good.
It's like a beat.
It's a 1,000, 2 1,000, and the body's like, yeah, no,
That's why you saw it look the way it did, because he gets hit right. He kind of takes a retreat step, and then it's the knee.
Because you think it's gonna go away.
Yeah, because you think you're okay, and then you're like, oh, I'm not.
Yeah. Your body, your liver, it just can't recalibrate.
Yeah, because these people get hit a lot.
Yeah.
Right, and they get hit really hard a lot, so they think they're going to be okay. Yep. Because most of the time, if you get hit in even a bad body shot, right? Most of the time you get hit, it's the initial is the worst, and then it fades, and you can kind of recover and recoup. That is not how a liver shot goes.
No.
You get hit, you think you're going to be okay, and then your body's like, no, immediate shutdown. We are done here.
Just the opposite of the jailed R. Kelly. My mind's telling me no.
Yeah.
But my body.
Yeah, no. His body was
telling
him
it was
no.
just the opposite.
His body was
his
telling him
mind
no.
was willing, the body was like,
and you can see in his eyes too, because there's like a desperation.
Yep. He's like, come on.
Why can't I stand up?
Yep, he just couldn't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, get that man to the locker room.
Yeah.
Like,
just make sure that he doesn't. We don't have to clean up the mat here.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just
Or the ring, yeah.
I'm telling you, you spar enough.
I will say, I know we got other things to get to here before we just stick on the fight for. I didn't think Garcia did a good job of using some of his built-in advantages.
Me too. I'm with you.
Like I really did not think he played to his strengths well.
He
just let Tank get inside of him constantly.
I wish I could. I just wanted to ask him why, as a hooker, he didn't move left. I wish Garcia would have moved to his left more. Keep his lead foot outside of Tank's lead foot. So he could have stayed out of harm's way. He kept working back to his right. Maybe he was more comfortable trying to get his jab off that way.
But he weirdly still wasn't doing work with his jab.
No, I know.
Like if you're gonna make that decision, because of your jab, you have to be able to use it to both inflict a little punishment and keep Tank outside of your body.
And it made me mad.
Right?
Like, I couldn't believe, like, the announcers afterwards were talking about an immediate 10-8 round. I'm like, the flash knockdown
in round 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know how many punches Tank landed in that round?
Like 2?
4.
Yeah. Not a lot.
That's not a 10-8 round.
No. A 10-8 round is like when you win the round and then you get a knockdown.
It's like that is not a knockdown does not automatically make it a 10-8.
It's like an extra point.
He landed 4 punches in that round.
Normally you get a 10-8 round because in order to get a knockdown, you've done some total damage.
If I was Garcia, I would be a little disappointed in my performance because I felt like he didn't control the controllables.
Yeah.
Now,
again, he had some built-in advantages. I don't think he used.
These people talking about Tank and Shakur at what weight? I mean, Shakur Stevens is a 135-pounder. I mean, Tank tipped the scales 144 and some change. How about Muleheisen nailing Garcia's?
Yeah.
Post the rehydration. It's like, Ryan's not going to come in more than 145, 146.
Yeah, he was at 146.
144.9.
Oh, 144.9. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like,
146 was the limit.
I was like,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well done.
Nailed it.
Do you want to know about another fight?
What's that?
6:30 tonight. I feel like we should have Steve Milheisen on just tonight to preview Tampa and Toronto because I guarantee you there's going to be a fight in that game tonight.
Yeah. When you start throwing hands with Stamkos, who's not a fighter, that one's probably going to be personal. But I'll tell you who quietly is playing good hockey without playing their best hockey. The flipping Bruins. They got outshot again, and they're mauling Florida.
Yeah, I mean they're pretty good.
Yeah, no, they're legit.
Like let's not. I mean,
their B game is pretty.
I'll say when you're at that level, you don't have to bring your A game. You're still better than most people.
It's pretty. The Stars fought off, and how about the must win from my pick, the Oilers coming back in OT? Like they scare me because they're not clutch. Like they kind of choke,
which is not something you love. That's not
but Draisaitl, those guys. Shane's smiling over there because he's an Avs fan, but man,
today's an Avs fan. We'll see. You know, he's
tonight 2-1. It'll be Leafs Lightning 2-1. Devils Rangers 2-1. Knights Jets. And 2-1 Avalanche.
And hopefully we don't have any OT games. I mean, they went 3 for 4, the first 3 on Saturday, winning the OT. We do not want a continuation of that tonight.
I'm calling my shot, Shane. Kraken win the night. That series will be tied 2-2.
Probably. I mean,
release the Kraken.
Try not to stay up late, Shane. What's going on?
Yeah, I don't want to stay up late.
He's got the internet. It's been enough problems for him now. Enough problems for him at home.
You know, I think the biggest problem with that series has been that it's new for them to have playoff games, so the crowd has just been electric. I mean, that has probably been, I even tweeted it out the other day, that has probably been the loudest crowd that I've ever heard, because that's at a good portion of the game, and I was listening to the Avs broadcast on radio, a good portion of the game I couldn't hear the announcers at all.
Shane, was it deafening?
It was deafening.
Annoying. Your Golden State Warriors with Draymond coming off the bench,
even things up,
even with a timeout.
I mean, listen, everybody makes mistakes. That's a bad one. I mean,
his shot selection in crunch time I'm not enamored with either.
No, there's times where he takes stuff that I don't love. I also feel like there's sometimes he gives up the ball, and I don't love it.
Kind of like R.J. Barrett shooting a 3 with 48 seconds left, up 8, and
I mean, let's not put R.J. Barrett and Steph Curry in the same.
Loses his mind. He's like, terrible shot.
If you don't love it, leave it.
Let's not put Steph Curry and R.J. Barrett in the same conversation.
I won't.
Ever.
I'm sorry.
That's offensive to me and my religion.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Sorry about that.
There's some things that you don't love there, but also he was awesome the rest of the time. I mean, and he has been. That's kind of what he does. What I don't know is I genuinely don't know if they can win a road game.
Right.
And they've got which means they have zero margin for error at home.
So Clay coming off career highs in January and February. People forgot that he was playing so well.
Yeah.
Kind of took March off a little. He's 4 of 9 from behind the arc last night. And was he 9 of 15 from the field?
I believe so. Yeah.
You get that, Clay, 26-point Clay?
Good to go.
Well, that boy good.
You're good to go. Honestly, and if you get that Poole, I think Poole is 8 for 15.
Yeah.
You get 8 for 15 Poole, I'll take that all day because
it's about time. They need him to be that guy on the road.
They need him to be the guy that he was last year in the playoffs. And he's the guy I trust the least out of guys that they really, really need because his game is so chaotic sometimes.
So, shocked that De'Aaron Fox is second in the league in clutch points?
I don't know if I'm shocked. He's been so good that, if he's leading the league basically or close to the top of the league in just about any category, it's not shocking because he's been that good. And I don't know if people have been paying attention, but he's turned into a really, really good point guard. And I mean, if they weren't playing Golden State, I'd be rooting for Sacramento. I like that team. I like the way they play. I've always been kind of a Malik Monk guy. He
gets buckets.
I've enjoyed.
He was good for Los Angeles.
Yeah, they probably should have re-signed him.
Yeah.
He might have been useful.
Although I like her bench, but yeah, I'd have taken.
You like your bench now?
I'd have taken. Yeah, for sure. Real time. You're right.
Post trade deadline.
100%.
Before that, it was a disaster.
100%.
But yeah, I mean, the West is. I mean, throw a dart, man. I have no idea.
Does Giannis have to play tonight? You realize they're down 2-1, right?
Yeah, no, they're in trouble. And I don't think this is a fake, this is a real thing. He is injured.
So, well, obviously.
No, but I mean, there was talk before the first game that he missed that they're like, they're just giving him an extra day.
Yeah, this ain't Embiid.
No.
Up 3-0.
He is
they need,
injured.
Yeah.
They need Giannis. I don't know. I mean, it's a back, right? I don't feel good about that.
Especially as a 7-footer.
Even if he, people forget that he's a big man because of how he moves, because of how he plays. He's a big man with a back problem. That's a concern. And you just wonder, even if he does play, how healthy is he? He's a super athletic guy. How much does that hamper his movement? Backs freak me out, man, because they're so hard to get right.
Hey, were you cheering to see your guy get kicked out of another game?
Who, Draymond?
No, Dylan Brooks.
Oh, I'm always cheering for Dylan Brooks to get kicked out of games.
You hate that guy.
I hate that guy so much. He is one of the – you know what it is? I really dislike people who have no self-awareness. He doesn't know that LeBron's better than him. He really doesn't.
He said he's old. LeBron kept it quiet, but he and AD go for 56. More apt to go up 3-1. The Heat or the Lakers?
Ooh, I'm going to say...
Miami's at home.
I'm going to say the Heat because I don't know if Giannis is playing. And if he is, I don't think he's healthy.
And Nebraska baseball. The Brooms went from 1st to 5th, just like that.
Gotta win the tournament.
Yeah, so much more all week. Ravi, stay right here. We'll talk draft, a ton that we didn't get to today. That's just a sports cleanup, coffee and cream. Thanks for being a part of it. Us two back together tomorrow.